Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Mingles and Morley, it showed that the earth they don't move, huh? What they do, shorten the length of the ruler. Hey, that's just how they fooled ya. Tune in Wednesdays, bet that we gon' school ya. Mingles and Morley, it showed no displacement. Nicholson, Gale, Pearson, it measured rotation. Let's break it down in layman. That means the Earth is stationed. No planets and spaceships, they're all animations. Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend.
Warning. The following contains scenes that globularists may find disturbing. If you are suffering from cognitive dissonance, you may experience
Boom. In a world where no one knows what the world is. What's up, fam? Welcome to, relatively speaking, episode 11, The End of Einstein. Yep. As if it ever began, am I right? I know we took a little break, a lot of stuff going on, helping a friend out, pretty time-consuming stuff, figuring out the crib situation, but here we are. Just to kind of explain a little preface to the stream. Debunking Einstein would kind of be like a misnomer because there's nothing to debunk. You don't have to debunk something that isn't established. In its very foundation, relativity was built upon the required assumption that matter contracts and shortens. You just can't tell. On its face, there's a claim that's unfalsifiable, made up pseudoscientific nonsense that has never been verified, only indirectly detected. What that means is assumed to exist going into the observation, and then reified. No causal mechanism, meaning a mechanical cause, has never even been theorized or agreed upon for this claim. Then on top of that preposterous claim, which has again never, ever been verified, admittedly, when I say admittedly, I mean it's well known within the highest levels of academia, that's never truly been established. Breaking up some? Boom. Sorry. Maybe that's better. Let me know if that's better.
1929G donated $100 through Super Chat. Once the first chain of deviation is formed, all the others follow.
Thank you for the generous donation. 1929G. Not sure exactly what you're talking about, but I appreciate the generous donation. They can't stop. They can't and won't stop us all. The Lord Racer for being a miswit. And then shout out to Justin for the gifted memberships. All right. So length contraction is required for relativity. Literally. Again, it's like this highlighter. It's moving, so it's getting shorter. But if you measure it, it's going to look the same length. It's actually gotten shorter. You just can't tell because your ruler got shorter also. And the Earth got shorter. And all the space within your reference frame got shorter. So stupid. So anyway, I don't have to debunk that. That's ridiculous. If I have to debunk that, you have to debunk that little fairies sprinkle fairy dust on me every morning to make me wake up. Prove that the fairies don't do that. Well, how can I prove that? I can't even find the fairies. How? Prove it. Debunk it. It's stupid. It's very illogical. Fundamentally illogical. Okay, another problem, of course, is while it claims that, it must then claim that time, you know that it's specifically how we quantify change and motion, specifically motion that we see in the sky above us. Time slows down because it physically dilates. Okay, that's a cool claim. No direct evidence of it ever. So, on its face, I don't have to verify, I don't have to irrefutably falsify the notion that the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning cartoon ball flying around the sun in the vacuum of space. So, these are just facts. People will deny these facts. In fact, they won't even deny them. What they'll do is avoid them. And they'll say, anything else in the world. Buffering a lot on my side. Is it working for everyone else? Is it buffering or is it running smooth? Buffering for everyone? Oh my goodness. Is Rockfin buffering? I don't know. I don't know what to do about the buffering. Okay. I have no idea what I can do about it. All right. So there's the fundament. Now we could go through all kinds of things where this is what happened was they took relativity and ran with it because they had to. They couldn't come with anything else. It was the best anyone could come up with. In fact, they were freaking out until Einstein came up with it, which really he didn't even do that. He stole the idea from Henri Poincaré. But anyway, so they didn't take it and they start running with it. Well, and just pretend we have to assume it's true because there's no other way to explain how the Earth could be moving around the sun and us not detect it. So it must be true. Or we have to get rid of our belief system, our religion that the Earth moves around the sun. Okay, well, I don't have that religion. I don't believe in that. I'm not part of that cult. I don't feel the need to believe in things evidence say aren't true. That's weird to me. So I don't need to believe in relativity. It doesn't have any evidence. It makes a ridiculous claim on its face. Doesn't matter contract, you just can't tell. So, moving forward, relativistic prediction, we're supposed to see a star lens around the sun during an eclipse. And out of the 35 plates, 33 of the plates didn't detect it at all whatsoever. And only 2 sort of apparently did, although those plates were destroyed and that evidence was never provided. And therefore, that actually refuted relativity because all 35 of them must, it is necessitated, have detected that star with a very precise prediction from relativity if it is in fact true. So relativity was actually debunked by the very quote-unquote experiment, not a real scientific experiment, that is invoked to supposedly support it. And we could go on and on and on. Everything debunks it. You can check out Space Audit. We had him on Globebusters, right? He just now broke down how there's actually a preferred direction of the quote-unquote propagation of light. The quote-unquote speed of light has a preferred direction. That debunks Einstein. Specifically says there is no preferred direction. Everything is relativistic. There is no preferred frame of reference at all. So debunks it right there, and they actually have to utilize this understanding for what people call GPS. And it never ends, right? Michelson, Morley, and then replicated by in like 1925 through the 20s many times, or I think 5 million times, 5,200,000 times by Dayton Miller, showing that Michelson, Morley replicated, accounting for all variables, controlling all potential variables that could affect the outcome, show consistently the friendship changes based on what time of year it is in the sky, which that can't happen if supposedly what causes the seasons and the equinoxes is the Earth moving around the sun. It shows that that effect is actually caused by the sky, and this debunks relativity as well. Again, done over 5 million times, and Einstein himself said, if what Dayton Miller is showing is true, it topples relativity from the throne. Again, the major point here is, why is it even on the throne? It's ridiculous. There's no evidence of it at all. It reifies conceptual abstractions on its face. You can't attribute physical properties to conceptual abstractions, one of which is a privation, which is the absence of nothingness. It cannot have any physical properties. Okay, that's not what this stream is about. Stream is the end of Einstein, as in, even in the modern mainstream academic sphere, Einstein is done. Now, when you talk to people, the layman that runs around and defends mainstream science, probably thinks they came from rocks and all this stuff, they will deny this and they'll try to gaslight you, make you feel stupid, but I want you to know, this is how it always works. Intelligent people who think for themselves, critically assess the evidence, actually go and look and try to find the truth. They discover that major presuppositions of quote-unquote science, which is actually pseudoscience and consensus and occult and religion and the opposite of science, are wrong. They're consistently wrong. And people discover that they're wrong. They start pointing out that they're wrong. They show all the evidence. But then there are people that are not capable of that intellectual individual assessment, and they run around making fun of them. Okay, that always happens, and that's all that's going to happen, but with this discussion as well. But this is fact, right? If you look into the highest levels of academia and in terms of even the local scale of physics, quantum physics, Einstein doesn't work. Einsteinian physics doesn't work, and it's well known. So what we're going to do is we're going to get straight into it, and we're going to start showing you some of these people explaining this to you, and I'm going to start off from a video. This is actually a physicist, and he's also a professor at a university in Australia. And this is from a couple days ago, and and you'll see him straight up telling you this and why. And then I'm going to show you, this is not new. Here's a video from a year ago. Here's a video from 7 years ago, right? And we could debunk Einstein in many ways. You can go check out tons of stuff. Even on this channel, we've just absolutely dunked all over Einstein. All you get back is nuh-uh. And you get back repeated robotic religious cult phrases like, relativity is the most scientifically validated and verified theory of all time. It's literally not, though. It's just a saying. But if you just say that over and over, it will actually work, right? People will believe it. Who cares? Who cares what those people believe? All right, so we're going to play this video. Hopefully everything's working. Sorry if it's kind of glitching out. I don't know what to do. So we're going to watch this video, and it's very important because you're going to realize as we go through these that it has very serious implications, and it reminds me of the famous saying, the first sip of quote-unquote science will have you an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass is waiting God. Bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you, and that is what they're discovering now. Now, they cannot accept that. This is the same reason they couldn't accept the Earth is in the center, despite all empirical, physical, visual, observational evidence ever has always shown us that we're in the center. And every theory used to try to explain it away has fallen apart, doesn't work. The evidence directly refutes it over and over and over to such a point now where it's just like, oh yeah, it's always going to look like we're in the center. All the evidence is always going to show us that we're in the center. Any attempt to explain that we're not in the center will never work. But we are going to refuse to believe it because it means that there's a crater. This is the same thing that's going on here at the top levels of quantum physics and cosmology, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. We're going to cover it. Now, we covered the anything but God last, relatively speaking. This is specifically the end of Einstein. It is, right? That's why there's a modified Newtonian dynamics theory that's being proposed. If Einstein's relativity was so legitimate and awesome and didn't replace it, it's because they know it has to be replaced. It doesn't work. So if you run around talking about Einstein and how stupid flurfs don't believe in Einstein, they're so dumb, relativity is such a proven scientific fact, you are just wrong and ignorant, and you will only be able to get some type of illusory confirmation from other lay people that simply are not going to look into the evidence. So there's a bit of the intro just so everyone understands. We're not trying to debunk Einstein's theory. It'll come up, of course, inevitably, but First of all, we don't have to debunk it. It was never established. It was never validated. Secondly, we've already debunked it, even giving it the unearned position as if it should be debunked. It is laughable. All right, so let's watch this video. I find it to be quite interesting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We will pause and commentate. If you have any questions, hit me up in the chat, and we will read the super chats throughout. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Let's move from sort of simple astronomy to particle physics. And for particle physicists, one of the most exciting findings for them in the last few decades was the discovery of the Higgs boson, a particle that was predicted by the Standard Model in the 1960s, but that was undetected until 2012 when scientists working on the Large Hadron Collider sort of detected it. However, I've heard you say that, strictly speaking, the claim that the Higgs boson exists is a non-scientific statement. What do you mean by that?
Well, the correct statement would be the hypothesis that the Higgs boson does not exist has been falsified with 5 sigma confidence.
I see. So it's just a matter of being precise about the language with which we describe science and separating it from this kind of more colloquial kind of language.
Yes. So with the Higgs boson, it's correct to say today the Higgs boson exists, and I don't want to use the word belief in science, right? But in that case, we would say I'm convinced the Higgs boson exists, just like I'm convinced that the proton exists or the electron exists, which does not exclude always the possibility that there might be a completely different mathematical construction which would also contain entities which we call protons, but which have a totally different theoretical description. Of course, we don't know whether this exists.
So he's sitting here telling you, I left this part in because it's hilarious. The Higgs boson, which people call the God particle, supposedly gives mass to most of everything that has quote-unquote mass, which is just a concept anyway. It doesn't actually exist. People just think it does. People think that you're crazy if you question it. No, it's just a theory. They call it the God particle. It doesn't exist. They just need everything to be particles, and their theory doesn't work. And this is the quantum stage, and we'll get more into that as well, because both Einstein and the current quantum theories are both dead. Objectively, they must change and be replaced. Even within the heliocentric paradigm, of course, those people willing to accept the evidence for what it is and know that we don't have to believe in the heliocentric paradigm are going to be eons above and ahead of the other groups intellectually. But anyway, and he even sits here and lets it slip, like what we call the proton may not even be that. It may be something else entirely. It's just a concept that we have. Now, this is not just some random person, right? Now, we're not going to appeal to this guy's authority because this guy is not actually even correct, right? Like, he still is trying to explain the pseudoscience. All right.
Maybe it exists. We just don't know at the moment.
And what about dark matter, to go from particle physics now to cosmology? It's an entity that's postulated by cosmologists in order to make sense of observations that would otherwise conflict with general relativity and some other theoretical claims that cosmologists operate under, the so-called standard model of cosmology. So a lot of people are pretty convinced that dark matter does in fact exist. Are you skeptical of that statement for the same reasons you are for the Higgs boson statement of existence, or are there other reasons that come into this?
Yes, no, I wouldn't say I'm skeptical. I would say that the existence of dark matter, cold dark matter particles, has been falsified with more than 5 sigma confidence. So it's not.
So he said, you don't believe in dark matter? He said, decision of observational capability now that has, in his assessment, falsified the notion that cold dark matter exists.
There. In fact, it's much more than 5 sigma. So now, which means...
Can you tell us what 5 sigma is for those who don't remember their statistics?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so. Imagine you observe an apple falling down from a tree, right? And you see that for the first time, and you say, that's interesting. It's a law that it always falls down because 2 observations don't really make the decision, right? And it's been established that you've completely lost confidence if you have to do this 2 million times. That's the sort of observation. So you observe 2 million experiments of the falling of apple which detaches from the tree, and if in every single case it always falls down following the same description of how it gets fast as it falls, at that point you would say you have the 5 sigma confidence, which means that the probability that the apple will not fall down has become negligibly small. You just don't want to entertain that idea anymore because it will absolutely not be economic.
So going back to dark matter, what makes you believe that dark matter's existence has been disproven with such high confidence?
Because we've done, since 25 years, we are studying the properties of galaxies, and we've put a lot of emphasis into understanding how galaxies function. So we means myself and the collaborators I have in many countries. And there are a few key experiments you can do, experiments in the sense of the theory making very clear, hard predictions, the dark matter theory, and then we can test that against the observations. And one particularly strong prediction is that if you have galaxies orbiting other galaxies and they are moving around in the dark matter halo, so every galaxy has this huge dark matter halo, and if it's moving around this dark matter halo, it will be suffering, it will be losing kinetic energies, it will be getting slower and falling towards the center of the other galaxy and merge. So this is called the dynamical friction. It's the same as if you have a pot of honey and you put a marble into the honey, it will not accelerate downwards, but it will slowly sink. Yeah? Although if you have the same pot without honey, the ball would just fall down quickly. In the honey, it will sink slowly. So that basically the same thing happens in a dark matter halo. A galaxy enters this dark matter halo and it slowly sinks down. It doesn't accelerate fast as it should if there were no dark matter halo. So we've tested this observationally, and the effect of the slowing down is not there, yeah, with that type of confidence.
It's not there. With that type of confidence, which he said is so confident that basically you can neglect it. I really want... Now, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is what you're going to find here, okay? I'm sorry that the video's low. I'm sorry if there's something going on with the connection. I can't do anything about it. I love you guys. We will be moving soon. Hopefully everything will just continue to improve. But this is... A lot of people are like, oh man, this, you know, like you're trying, what are you talking about, blah, blah, blah. No, this dude is being much more intellectually honest than most people. He may have still drank some of the Kool-Aid. But the point is, if dark matter's real, and let me mind you, okay? Very simple, it's just a fact. Dark matter has to be real if Einstein's theory of gravity is correct. Has to be. We've covered this. We've covered this on this channel. We've covered dark matter. I've covered this ad nauseum, right? So just look through those stuff. So dark matter has very specific, hard predictions, if it actually exists, where it has to make the gravity work, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't slow down towards the center of the assumed dark matter halo. Now, again, just like relativity itself, it's undefined, undetected. No one knows what it is. No one can find. I mean, it's nothing that needs to be disproven anyway. But if you assume some hypothetical fairy dust and then try to fix your theory with that hypothetical fairy dust and then show us the predictions with the fairy dust that fix your problem, if we then go look and the predictions even further don't work, it's like, wait, you have to assume that there's 83% of all matter is something that can't be defined or detected to fix your gravity theory. And when you assume that it still doesn't work, you got a problem. There is nowhere else to go. You can't take dark matter out to fix the problem because you need dark matter to fix the first problem. Einstein is done. It is 2023. It is the 21st century. And this is just a fact. This is not a flat earth bias, geocentrist bias, opinion, nothing. It's just a fact. It is the end of Einstein. Even in the top levels of academia, if you want to continue to believe in this theory, you need to know and accept what the theory is. The theory is no longer Einstein's theory of gravity. That is a fact. I know I said that's a fact 5 times. Maybe people will let it sink in. It's just a fact. It's buffering. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't know what I can do about it. What can I do other than like end the stream? Because apparently Rockfin's working fine, so I don't know what I can do unless they're attacking the stream. So, all right, let's continue.
And so the galaxies are...
You can, of course, just go to Rockfin. I will drop, like, someone drop the Rockfin link in the chat for me if you don't mind.
Encountering each other far too rapidly. And a case in point is the Large Magellanic Clouds, which is just now racing past our Milky Way, very close to the Milky Way, actually, and it's far too fast. So, and the Small Magellanic Clouds too.
So this was a prediction that was made by the claim that dark matter exists, and it's been falsified,
yeah, absolutely.
in your view, by observation. Exactly. So why do people still, in your view, cling on to this idea of dark matter?
Well, that's an interesting sociological problem which one would like to understand because it has no rational basis. It is non-rational.
I mean, this dude is being so legitimately honest. It's kind of like scary for him. I'll throw these on and see if these are any good. All right, let's keep going.
So this was a prediction.
Pay attention to this part.
Prediction that was made by the claim that dark matter exists, and it's been falsified,
yeah, absolutely.
In your view, by observation. Exactly. So why do people still, in your view, cling on to this idea of dark matter?
Well, that's an interesting sociological problem which one would like to understand because it has no rational basis. It is non-rational, and it's probably...
It's non-rational. It's almost religious zealotry. It's like it's a cult.
Related to sociological pressures in the community. So when students...
Sociological pressures in the community? Oh, man. You mean like the people that are scared to even entertain alternative cosmologies because they are actually intellectually insecure, so they must then try to create some public illusion that they are intellectually superior by attacking those who are actually more informed than them? You mean the same exact type of sociological pressure that creates this echo chamber of cult-like religious reified beliefs amongst all the pseudoscientific communities that are falsely called science? The same authorities that people appeal to? You mean the same type of sociological pressure that doesn't even allow you to publish papers if it doesn't push the same propaganda that you're supposed to believe in within this cult? No way.
So they study and then they want to do a research project. They are, for one thing, attracted by the interesting ideas and possibilities of doing research, and the other by how great the group looks like they would like to join. So it's tribal thinking, and that pulls a lot of young...
Tribal thinking? I thought scientific thought was the opposite of tribal thinking, and you were actually supposed to be encouraged to question the status quo and the consensus because science isn't about consensus. I thought tribal thinking was primitive and archaic and religious type of dogmatic approach to things. It's almost like modern cosmology is a religion and it's dogmatic and it's not scientific. And by the way, I'm just trying to let you guys know, you may be new to this channel, and I know we're going to get a lot of new people coming to this channel in the next 6 months. This is the deal, man. It's okay, just let it go. Because if there's a group of people that are refusing to look at the evidence honestly, and then they're so desperately trying to attack other people that dare question it and attacking people, well, if there's a group of people over here that are pointing out this for 7, 8, 9, 10 years and saying, we already know that, we found it's obvious that it's wrong, they're in a cult, they're in a belief, they're not allowed to think outside of it, right? Like the heliocentric model, for example, is way more than the idea of relativity. You think relativity's dogma is bad. Question if the earth moves around the sun. Oh my gosh, you're going to get railroaded. Okay? If there's a group of people that have been knowing this whole time and telling you the whole time, maybe you should step back and reconsider what those people are presenting to you. Don't you think that may be an intelligent and humble way to approach the situation? I think it may.
People into an established thinking, because just that's where they can have a career, that's where the funding is, that's where the leaders of the field are famous, they get prizes, and that's a self-strengthening system in a scientific establishment which relies on competition for funding. And that is simply, and I think that's the whole fallacy of the situation, that comes from American United States. This concept of competition for funding in the sciences is the most stupid idea you could have even...
Bro, this dude is cool, man. I'm not gonna lie. At the beginning, he shows how incredibly ignorant he is about the subject of flat Earth. It's funny because flat Earth was involved in this conversation. Flat Earth is on Tucker Carlson. I'm letting you guys know it's about to happen. It's about to happen. Savor the calm before the storm. But this guy is speaking so much truth right now, bro. He is on our team. Like, do you hear what this dude is? He's calling out that all of these different universities and these quote unquote scientists and all these different organizations, they're fighting for funding. So they know that they can't get approved for the funding unless they're suggesting that they're investigating a way to further push the accepted consensus, the propaganda, and that this is an incredibly stupid idea because it's nothing but detrimental to real science. This dude is freaking crushing right now, bro. So just, his name is right here, Pavel Krupa. You can look him up, and we'll look up his, let's just look up his credentials right now so everyone can see them. So he is an Australian astrophysicist and professor at the University of Bonn in Australia. Australian astronomer. Yeah. We appeal to authority until they don't say what the cult allows them to. Then authorities don't matter, and random anonymous haters on the internet can now call this guy a quack, even though they just appealed to the idea of the authority of scientists and consensus. Yeah, history will reflect you guys are lame.
Just that's where they can have a career. That's where the funding is. That's where the leaders of the field are famous. They get prizes, and that's a self-strengthening system in a scientific establishment which relies on competition for funding, and that is simply. And I think that's the whole fallacy of the situation. That comes from American United States. This concept of competition for funding in the sciences is the most stupid idea you could have even thought up, because that's absolutely not how science works. In order to discover the laws of nature, you cannot compete with anybody. You can only follow your intuition and work on that for as long as it takes to develop and have scientists competing for funding in order to improve our understanding of nature. That's just the most stupid idea ever brought up in terms of...
This dude is just OG, bro. Like, oh, wait. So people have to trust their intuition, use their pattern recognition, think intellectually outside of dogma to make new discoveries, and that's the actual philosophical approach required to interpreting scientific evidence, and that's the only way you can make progress in science. So whenever people like me sit here and say, well, actually, light doesn't travel. That's why we have superluminal observations, because light isn't some type of corporeal physical particle. It isn't traveling from point to point. It's nothing more than a perturbation of the background medium. It has different modalities, different vibrational resonances and excitations created with a different spectrum within the EMF spectrum, or the EMR spectrum that we call light, and it's actually instantaneously there. It's nothing more than excitation or perturbation, specifically a rate of induction, and that actually that this entire all-encompassing field of energy is the pure potential state at which all energy comes from, and everything has a fractal commonality of geometry, which is actually a torus, which is made up of two conjugate geometric expressions, which is a centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence overlapped on top of each other, and this fundamental torus or double torus makes up all things, and it is the fractal basic geometry of all things, and that there is no such thing as little physical particles. In fact, matter is nothing more than a more condensed, what we call matter is more condensed version or modality of this. When I start to say these kind of things, sure, I'm speculating at times. I'm looking at the evidence and I'm piecing the puzzles together, right? If we have a vacuum chamber, and then we can actually use the concept of molecules and atoms, which are all pseudoscientific concepts we use and reify to quantify and count things, right? If we use that and we see this much air has this much energy, then we go take as much air out as we possibly can, and we know there's still a little bit of air in there, but basically no air. It's as close to no air as we can get, and we can use the number by measuring the pressure within that certain volume of a vacuum chamber. Okay, well, there's this much pressure, so there's, based on our well-established predictions of this much air gives us this much energy, there should be this much energy in the vacuum chamber, and we see that there's way more than that, and we see that there's a waving motion. Well, waves are not things. They're just a type of movement. It's not a noun, it's a verb. I can wave my hand, not hand to wave. So either you have water moving or you don't have the wave of water. You can't pull the wave out of the water, which means there's something in that vacuum chamber that is waving. What is waving? Requires some type of medium. Well, of course, that's what all evidence has always shown us. There's an etheric background medium. And this is my point. When I speculate that, am I claiming to have all the answers? No. Am I very confident in my positions? Yes. Do I update them? Yes. But people like myself, people like many people in this community, are what science is. Ironically, we get called science deniers, but just like this guy's pointing out, we are the scientists. So just cry about it.
Of our civilization. You can do that in economics. You get a better product, and that will be bought, and then you invest into that, but not in science. Absolutely not. Science is art. A scientist, a brilliant scientist, paints a picture, which is the theory. For that, they sometimes have to invent their own tools, like Newton had to invent the mathematics to actually do the
You said I would bet money he isn't a flat earther. I just said, yeah, he isn't a flat earther. At the beginning, he gives an example of like, well, the flat earth theory, the flat earth idea, or the round idea, and he uses an analogy of like how you become sufficiently confident in something to then build your ideas off of that. But I can guarantee you, he hasn't really fully researched flat earth. He's just looking at this other stuff, right? He's an astrophysicist. He's just been like, but the point is, he's exercising intellectual integrity here, and it sounded like the person interviewing him was like, you may be jumping the gun on thinking flat earth is stupid. I'm just letting you know. It's just the calm before the storm. But I don't care if he's a flat earther. We're actually currently discussing something else, right? So can't exclude people because they don't agree with you on everything, or then you can't actually discuss anything with anyone.
Which you did falling apple with the motion of the moon, and that's what one has to do today. Have to allow the scientists to work creatively. And the question is, how does one sell this concept that you allow some people to be supported by the taxpayer to do that? It looks like a holiday. People just dream off. They go on a ship for 3 years and just dream up some ideas funded by the taxpayer. Right? Doesn't sound right. On the other hand, that's actually the basis of how our civilization understands what's happening out there.
So let's get back to the kind of scientific motivation for dark matter, putting aside all these interesting kind of claims about the sociology behind it. Dark matter was originally postulated to explain some observations that didn't seem to make sense with the theory of gravity that we had. What's the alternative? Do we need to abandon our theory of gravity? Do those observations mean that that's wrong?
Well, given the scientific deduction that dark matter does not exist with more than 5 sigma confidence, one cannot consider that model further, and so we have to indeed consider how can we explain what we observe out there. And so the next thing we do is to look at another proposition, which was formulated by Milgrom in 1983. It's a different law of gravitation. People call it the modified Newtonian.
This is the part where it gets into specifically the end of Einstein. And I do want to remind everyone, and yes, YouTube is for sure messing with the stream. Again, I saw people drop the Rockfin chat. Rockfin is running smooth. You could technically have them both pulled up, communicating there and communicating on my Telegram and communicating in Rockfin. We're going to get them to try to fix the chat a little better there. But YouTube's doing it because I just checked all of my connections. They're all ace. So yeah, let's just put it together. Rockfin has way less processing capability as a company than YouTube, and yet Rockfin's working perfectly fine and YouTube's not. So it speaks for itself. But I just want to remind the whole point of the stream, because I definitely digress. I'll be the first to admit it is the end of Einstein, and specifically at even if we dip off in real evidence, sometimes even real scientific experiments, and they're trying to interpret them. They're not some big collaborate lying conglomerate of people. They're just misled. They're lost in the sauce, right? So this mainstream heliocentric paradigm that people call you crazy for not believing in, I'm saying that within that paradigm, it is the end of Einstein. It is the end of Einstein. This is a fact, bro. It is a fact. And when you come across people on the internet that will try to intimidate you away from questioning, like, for example, the heliocentric model and mainstream cosmology, they will never say that Einstein's over. That's how you know it's a waste of intellectual energy to even truly take them seriously. They're just ignorant of their own position. Einstein is over. It's the end of Einstein. So here we're going to get more into that specifically. Then we're going to continue throughout the rest of the videos, commentating, showing that that is the case. Again, this is the point that within that paradigm, it is the end of Einstein.
In equivalence with Newtonian gravitation. And that's what we are doing. So we are working now to develop a new cosmological model with the basis of those equations of motion, because just like Newtonian gravitation, we get equations. We can type into the computer the differential equations which the particles have to follow and solve. So we can do that in Mond.
Oh, I want to say this too to a lot of the truthers here who have woken up to a lot of this stuff. We do see stuff move in the sky, and they move in relation to each other, and we can come up with equations to show exactly how they move in relation to each other to such an extent that it maps it out. And that's a consistent cycle. And so based on all empirical evidence we've ever observed, in order for something to move around something else, that needs a cause. Okay. So yeah, we don't deny gravity if you're properly defending, for example, my position, which is that the Earth is a geocentric stationary topographical plane that's within a contained system. Gravity means heavy, gravitas, heavy. Well, things are heavy, they have a certain heaviness, they have a weight, what we call weight, right? So we don't deny gravity, we don't deny gravitas, we deny gravitation. Now, get ready here. Truth is that there may actually be a central source of energy that causes everything to move around it, near Polaris. But if you have a background, what that will do is create a reaction, meaning you will have an action and a reaction. And there's a ripple. Everything reciprocates. All energy entails reciprocation. Its fundamental reason for this is that pressure mediates. So pressure mediation results in reciprocation. Okay, so there is in fact something, and they will never get close to figuring out what it is until they acknowledge what I just stated, which is that there is not just a singular action, there's an action and a reaction. And this is why they can't explain. You can't explain that if there's an action and a reaction for the motion of the stuff in the sky, the Earth has to be in the center. Even Newton himself said that. So I do want to point that out because I feel like a lot of people overlook that. Now, do we have some type of scientific burden to do that? No, because actually you can't science the sky. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't pursue knowledge and understanding. Where would flat Earth be nowadays without Dubé? That's a good question. Eric Dubé was a legendary part of all of this. Faye Holiday, welcome to Miss Wit Level 2. Hey, welcome to the Miss Wits Level 2. Thank you so much. All right, let's continue. And then we're going to go on to the other videos.
Conditions. One boundary condition is there's a hot Big Bang. CMB is the photosphere of the hot Big Bang. And then structures evolve as the universe expands in a traditional manner. And then we can apply, instead of Newton plus dark matter, because it's all non-relativistic, we apply Milgromian gravity without dark matter and study the structures which form. And the calculations which we've done show that what we observe, so the population of galaxies comes out just right. Yeah? You get these disk galaxies with the correct properties. You get the correct number of galaxies as a function of mass.
The reason they do that is because they have to account for real inertial forces. There's an angular momentum, and they just claim that they can just treat it as real inertial forces, but they aren't real inertial forces. But there's an angular momentum of the cosmos moving around the sky. This gives you an action and a reaction. The Earth is in the center. Everything is moving in relation to it within an etheric background medium. The longer that people deny it and refuse to accept this fundamental aspect of what we see, the longer we will run around and fairy tale land.
And the correct density of galaxies around us. So that's most remarkable and exciting. And so we now will continue this by looking at whether we need to relax, whether there are some tensions with this picture. This needs larger scale calculations. Was there a Big Bang? And so on.
So this theory is called the modified Newtonian dynamics. Does that mean that we're going, instead of making the leap from the Newtonian paradigm to Einstein, we're just modifying Newton? What's the right way to think about it?
Well, I think
the paradigm.
Yeah, the way I think about it is that the correct one. I don't know, but it modifies it in the sense of putting into the equations that the accelerations change when the curvature of so the gradient of the potential. So the curvature of space becomes nearly negligible, yeah? And that can be put into.
You have to understand what they're actually saying is that the motion within the background medium becomes negligible because you can call waves curves. And that's all they did was hijack the medium, call it space, thus emptiness, thus the concept, try to still keep the physical properties of a background medium, which has a tenuity beyond comprehension, according to Tesla. Tenuity meaning thinness, the primary substance, a gaseous-like substance that has a tenuity beyond comprehension, thus fluid-like properties. And waving is a motion within that, and it has an action and a reaction, and then they tried to quantify curved as if it is always there. But it is important to notice that it is the motion motion that causes the waving, and in fact, the waving causes the motion, to be more specific. So it is something causing the motion within the background. I know this is I shouldn't even do this right now, I'll be honest. I'm just going to give you guys this right here, and you can take it or leave it. I know some people will appreciate the potential profundity of it, okay? There's some primary source of energy, a life-giving force, if you will. It is setting the motion into the background. Okay, just like Tesla would even say. He called it prana from Eastern mythology type of beliefs. The prana, the life-giving force, I would obviously call it the creator, the life-giving force, the fundamental source of everything, okay? There's the background, or what people call the ether, and then there's the life-giving force. This sets the background into motion. That motion then ripples or creates what we call waves. Waves aren't things, they're motion. It creates a waving motion within this background ocean, okay? This motion then causes the motion of what we see in the sky. That's right. Take it or leave it, you know.
Non-modified, a generalized Poisson equation. And the way I think about it is that Einsteinian gravitation, Einstein postulated that we understand gravitation as a consequence of curvature of space and time, but that's just one possibility. There are other possibilities. Gravitation could be an emergent phenomenon from the different regions of space having different information content. That's from Verlinde, or because particles are waves, and so they react to changes of refractive index, which they themselves change because there are oscillations in some medium. You could call it the ether, if you like. And so the thing is that...
What a coincidence, bro. What a coincidence.
And that can be put into a non-modified, a generalized Poisson equation. And the way I think about it is that Einsteinian gravitation, Einstein postulated that we understand gravitation as a consequence of curvature of space and time, but that's just one possibility. There are other possibilities. Gravitation could be an emergent phenomenon from the different regions of space having different information content. That's from Verlinde, or because particles are waves, and so they react to changes of refractive index. So the thing is that gravitation is the least well understood phenomenon. I wouldn't want to call it a force because it might not be. It doesn't seem to be a force. So it's the least understood phenomenon. So it's not surprising that the one formulation which is currently favored, the Einsteinian formulation, fails. That's just no surprise. Could have worked.
Yeah, it's no surprise. Look, I'm just gonna tell you, man, something's making stuff move around, and it's the thing. It's my opinion, okay? Speculation station. For all those like who know how to repeat the science script and just want to come for me, okay? Speculation station, bro. It is an emergent property, and that's okay. So the waving itself is an emergent property. It emerges from the primary source that sets things into motion. Okay? Waving is in the background medium. What people are calling gravitation is just an effect. It's a reaction. It's emergent. It's an emergent property from that background that's oscillating, vibrating, waving. Okay? And nothing doesn't exist, so it certainly can't be waving. Okay, so it is an emergent property, and it thus must have an action and a reaction. And if this is true, which it must be in terms of physics, the Earth has to be in the center. It has to be in the center. If there is an action and a reaction in an emergent property from this background fluid-like medium, the Earth has to be in the center. There's no way around it. Someone said within the firmament. I think that the firmament has layers, and it's basically plasma-like, which is what we call ionized gas. It has different modalities, and just like we can take helium, which is the lightest gas, and you can turn helium into fluid, and you can get a superfluid, and then you can even continue it, and it turns into more of a solid structure. I think that it just increases with solidity as you get higher, and I think all of this happens within that. I think that the very center of the torus field, you can get outside of it. And I think that the creator may be within that, or the primary source of energy. Speculation station, let's move on to how this is the end of Einstein within their own paradigm. Oh, sorry, I was muted. Sorry. So this was 2 days ago. We covered it. I didn't finish it, but you can watch more of it if you would like. And then we're gonna come over here to this video and show like this is not a new idea. This is well known. You can actually go to Mindshock. He buries Einstein. There's all kinds of ways to bury current Einsteinian mechanics and dynamics and theories. But anyway, let's kind of check this one out. And then we have a few more for you. This is a bunch of cosmological problems within their meaning. This is the people admitting, oh, well, yeah, Einstein's wrong. Dark matter doesn't exist. This is even another one about how Einstein's wrong on Lex Friedman's show. And we might not watch all of these. Here, we can go ahead and play this one.
When we got news from many physicists had a heart attack when we got news from Geneva, Switzerland, that Einstein might be wrong. All hell broke loose in the physics community. Every physicist I know is taking a position on this hot topic because relativity is the foundation of modern physics, along with the quantum theory. Now, what they found was, if you take a beam of neutrinos from the atom smasher in Geneva, Switzerland, shoot the beam through the mountains from Switzerland to Italy over a distance of 454 miles, the neutrinos outraced a light beam by a distance of 60 feet. 60 feet over a distance of 454 miles. Well, that doesn't sound like much, but to a physicist, this is a disaster. It means that the foundations of modern physics have to be called into question.
And of course, this assumed invariant speed of light is retarded. Someone said Mindshock's just covering Run Cow. Yeah, I think his name is Run Tay Cow. Yeah, he buries relativity. That's right. But it's just kind of, it's like light work at this point. You can bury relativity with the simple fact that he attributed physical properties to conceptual abstractions such as space, which is the idea of nothingness or emptiness, quantified concepts that can't have properties, and time, a concept we use to quantify change, passing, and motion. They cannot have physical properties. That's why it is fundamentally different from the idea of the ether. You said idea. Yes, it is an idea. It's the word ether is an idea. But what the idea is that's postulated is not that ideas have physical properties, but rather a substantive fluid-like medium where these physical effects are emergent from that primary source. They are fundamentally different. One has logical viability and consistency and coherency. One is fundamentally impossible logically. What's it really AI? Good one. All right, here we go.
In modern times, no figure has more prominently represented the title of genius than theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, Time magazine's man of the century. Einstein's theories of special and general relativity continue to shape much of cosmology's theoretical framework. However, contrary to popular claims, not all experiments have, quote, confirmed Einstein's theories. Indeed, in a Space News episode earlier this year, physicist Wal Thornhill discussed the recent experimental confirmation of so-called spooky action at a distance, or quantum entanglement. Countless science headlines around the world declaring that Einstein was wrong. However, as Wal Thornhill discusses in this two-part episode, at the 100th anniversary of Einstein's theory of relativity, the belief that Einstein was right continues to endure.
Recent news headlines celebrate the 100th anniversary of Einstein's theory of relativity. But what really is there to celebrate? There have been no fundamental scientific breakthroughs in that time. Relativity and quantum theory remain as incompatible as ever. If Einstein was wrong, we have wasted a century. So a recent experiment is important because it discredited Einstein's relativity theory again. Only this time, all loopholes in the experiment were closed. The concept in quantum physics he disliked most, force, that connects separate bits of matter instantaneously. Einstein
would be dope to utilize a whiteboard for some of your streams. Yeah, I do have one. I'm thinking about integrating that actually, and even throwing on a lab coat for schooling Globers, but it'll be in the new house with the new setup.
Einstein's speed of light is not the barrier he postulated. The universe is a coherent, connected system. To progress once more, we must forget Einstein. It's a thankless and supremely difficult task to question the long-held beliefs of authorities, and there's no stronger faith.
Let me address one more thing. Someone said, I need to just go let him know how easy it is to put it to rest. I'll put it to rest right now. We don't need a debate. I'll put it to rest right now. Okay? If the reason that things fall is because the earth is actually moving up, which is just an unfounded claim that you have to assume and beg the question, start with, just like they assume with the earth, then why do objects fall at different rates at the same location? It has been measured with very precise interferometry that objects, the same objects, will fall in the same conditions as inside of a vacuum chamber, inside of a building. They'll drop a little BB, use interferometry lasers to measure how fast it falls, and the rate at which it falls will change, and the rate at which things fall is different throughout the earth. That proves the earth cannot be moving up to cause objects to fall down. There you go. What is the earth speeding up and slowing down, but just in different parts of the earth all at the same time? It's game over. Objects fall at different rates at the same location. So tell Dell, just let it go, bro. It's just ridiculous. All right.
Than that Einstein was a genius of the nation. The real story of Einstein would make a good sequel to Monty Python's parody of True Believers in the film Life of Brian, where no amount of argument or contrary evidence would sway the adulatory crowd. Like the hapless Brian in the film, Einstein denied his worshippers to no avail. Einstein is reported in the Scientific American of August the 23rd as having said, "I am no Einstein." But the author John Horgan, as a devotee, added reverently, "On top of all his other qualities, the man was modest." Why is it that people hang on his every word on any number of unrelated subjects, but on this most personal subject he was ignored? Unfortunately, students of the physical sciences are so busy mastering the basics of their chosen field.
This guy's a little boring. We may move on back to him. There's a lot of the problems with modern cosmology. Let's listen to a few minutes of it.
One of the most important pieces of evidence for dark matter as a particle is seen in the light that comes from the very early universe. The cosmic microwave background radiation reveals a lumpiness that tells us how matter pulled itself together under its own gravity at the early...
Now, what the lumpiness actually shows is that the Big Bang model is actually wrong because it claims that it should be isotropic and homogeneous. Yet, the lumpiness shows us that it's anisotropic, meaning it has a preferred direction, and that it's inhomogeneous, meaning it's not evenly distributed. Now, this is what they do. This is classic wizardry. You see, the strongest evidence that dark matter is a particle is that our Big Bang model doesn't work. But he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, well, we have to try to think that dark matter is a particle because there's no other way we can theoretically come up with to explain how the observations of the background radiation specifically refute our Big Bang cosmology. They spin it. This is Wizardry 101. Take the thing that refutes your model and then tout it as evidence or proof of your model. No one will think to look there. It's insane. So that's what he's actually saying. Okay, because the lumpiness, it's called anisotropic and inhomogeneous distribution, which is the exact opposite of what was predicted by Big Bang cosmology. And one of the millions of reasons why they need dark matter and need it to be a very specific thing, but can't detect it, can't define it, can't find it. You get it.
Earliest times. Back then, light and matter were locked together due to their extreme densities. Regular matter was kept from collapsing into any structures by the pressure of the intense radiation of that era. But dark matter doesn't interact with light, so it would have been able to collapse just fine. And after the universe had expanded and cooled enough for regular matter to be released from the clutch of light. But if dark matter isn't real and regular matter controls gravity completely, then no structure should have been able to form at those early times. For this reason, most forms of MOND, including Tevis, come up short.
Are you seeing what's going on? MOND is modified Newtonian dynamics, which is a popular attempt to replace Einsteinian gravity because it doesn't work and it's so fundamentally flawed and the evidence for dark matter is so lacking and no one can even comprehend what it should be and there's no evidence for it at all. And then whenever they assume it's real, even though they can't define what it is for almost a century now, that's science being stagnant for 100 years, claiming something's there that you can't find, and then not defining it, never finding it, never observing it, never having evidence for it, assuming it's true because if it's not, going and trying to apply the predictions built upon the assumption that dark matter is a real thing, because if it's not, again, then your theory's not going to work. That's a religion. And then those theories those predictions that come from the assumption that dark matter is a real thing don't work, specifically don't work, just like the previous video we watched explains. So then they start coming up with a modified Newtonian dynamics to try to explain away the need for dark matter, because the dark matter assumption doesn't even fix the problems. And then that doesn't work to explain their Big Bang cosmology, their made-up creation story of how everything started. It's not a religion, but they make up creation stories without evidence in the face of the actual evidence and refuse to entertain alternatives dogmatically. But it's not a religion, though. It's science.
And this is where the new guys come in. In 2020, Konstantinos Skordas and Tom Zloznik proposed a new relativistic version of MOND. And just last month, their paper passed peer review. Their big change was that they allowed the scalar field to change its behavior over time. They managed to tweak their equations so that in the early universe, the field behaved a bit like a type of matter, which Zloznik calls dark dust.
So literally, dude, just put dark in front of any word and claim it's there with no evidence, and somehow this is science, bro.
He was able to...
Why do they have to do this? Because the heliocentric model doesn't work.
Clump in the right way to kickstart cluster formation, but then later its behavior shifted so that it now behaves more like Bekenstein's Tevez proposal. More work is needed to see if the newly dubbed RelMond, relativistic MOND, works for galaxy clusters and keeps stars from exploding, but the authors are optimistic. Okay, so problem solved. We don't need dark matter anymore? Not so fast. Modified gravity theories still can't explain the bullet cluster, and I don't have time to get into that, and we've covered it before, so I'll just say that when two galaxy clusters collide and the dark matter gets ripped away from the light matter, it makes you doubt that dark matter is just light matter acting funny. Of course, there are MOND proposals which claim to address this, but the bullet cluster might be the most awkward result for modified gravity folks. At this point, the two theories are in a bloody theoretical knife fight, where the knife...
All right, look, it doesn't work. None of it works, bro. It's obvious why you have a fundamental assumption that you guys all assume and don't even re-examine, and that is that the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning ball revolving around the sun in an ever-expanding vacuum of nothingness tucked in an insignificant corner that doesn't matter, and it just looks like it's an illusion that we're in the center. And whenever you come up with that idea and that everything started from a singularity and exploded and expanded out, but in reality, we can't actually... explain how any of it would even happen in theory, and we claim that everything exploded and expanded from a single point, but simultaneously claim that there is no center. When you guys assume all of these ridiculous, fallacious, made-up, pseudoscientific, dogmatic belief systems and don't even dare re-examine them, all of your theories, every single attempt that you go forward with will not work. You're wasting time. All right, let's move on.
The main trouble I have with string theory is I don't think it's physics.
What's more interesting is that Sir Roger Penrose doesn't even believe in the idea of cosmic inflation and suggests that cosmic inflation is nothing more than a fantasy.
For example, you refer to inflation, that very fast inflation, as a fantasy. Do you still believe that?
Well, I'm been trying to write a book for about 10 years for the Princeton University Press called Fashion, Faith, and Fantasy in the New Physics of the Universe.
Oh, this is not a nobody, by the way. Roger Penrose. Let's just look him up for you guys. This is I'm showing you top level people within their paradigm, which is why this is called the end of Einstein, and it is again within their own paradigm. It is the end of Einstein. So, well-revered British mathematician and mathematical physicist, philosopher of science, and Nobel laureate in physics. This is not just some random dude. Okay. So, anyway, he's trying to write a book called, what do you call it? Something, Faith and Fantasy in the New Physics of the Universe. And let me come over here and explain this to you. He's saying that inflation, the inflation theory, is a fantasy. And I covered this recently. This series covers all these subjects that are being discussed. It's almost as if we're not so crazy. We know what we're talking about. We've done a lot of research, and we're just trying to bring the truth to the light because people are being suppressed because of dogma. It's danger dogma because it has philosophical implications, which makes people think they're insignificant. But the point here is, I explained, right, why they need inflation, and they call it there's something called the inflaton at the beginning of the universe. Well, because there was the flatness problem. The idea that if everything explodes out, if I throw a grenade, it'll explode out in all directions. It's not going to explode out and then be flat. It would be curved, either positive or negative curvature would come from this explosion type expansion. But the universe from within their paradigm is flat. And that doesn't make sense. It's called the flatness problem. And in fact, it is measured within their own methods of quote unquote measurement, which is calculative assumption, that it is measured to be 0.0000070 zeros, 1 flat, like that close to 0, which is perfectly flat. So it's this close to 0. 0 is perfectly flat. It's 0.0701. That's how close it is to perfectly flat. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. It's called the flatness problem. The exact amount of energy density required to do that makes no sense. Defies mathematical statistical probability. Doesn't work within their paradigm at all. It's called the flatness problem. What did they do? They said, oh, well, it didn't expand out flat. It was actually curved, but there was inflation at the very beginning, which straightened out the curve, so we just can't tell. It looks like it's flat. They used inflation to also explain away the horizon problem, which is that there's a finite distance, right? There's a finite cosmological horizon, a distance in all directions from a singular point, that a particle couldn't have traveled any further than that, because you have the age of the universe, 13.5 billion years. You have the supposed maximum speed of information or any particle or light, which is c. So you have the finite time, the finite speed claims, which means you have a finite distance, which means if you went as fast as you could for as long as you could only go so far, but that's a very small portion of this CMB, the entirety of the quote-unquote universe or the cosmos, which means these particles couldn't have interacted with other particles super far away because they didn't have the time to get there, even if they were traveling as fast as they possibly could within their paradigm. But they would have had to interact to have a homogeneous, evenly distributed energy, right? So their cosmology imploded on itself because these particles had to all be at the same place and then spread out evenly and distribute evenly, but they couldn't within their own paradigm. That was called the horizon problem. Inflation was a made-up idea thrown in to save the model from the flatness and horizon problem and many other problems. Okay, this is a religion, and we covered this recently. There's obviously no evidence for such a thing. It's all just made up. They just constantly shift the goalposts. It's just a religion. It's like the Catholic Church changing their doctrine over the years. But anyway, so this guy's obviously not being printed by the Princeton Press for obvious reasons. But again, he's just a Nobel laureate. What does he know? Within your own paradigm, it's well known that Einstein is dead, and that your current cosmological understanding with the application of relativistic gravity is dead, and that modified Newtonian dynamics gravity doesn't work. You know what does work? A geocentric Earth that's not moving. All of a sudden, it works again. Well, isn't that crazy?
And been trying to write a book for about 10 years for the Princeton University Press called Fashion, Faith, and Fantasy in the New Physics of the Universe. And the fantasy is mainly to do with inflation. That's true.
That's true. Science was so interesting, I dismissed any logical reasoning, denying purpose and intelligent design. Woke up after, quote, everything is connected. In my opinion, closest to actual, quote, theory of everything. Thank you. Much love. Yeah, Yaboa. Probably wrong, but thank you for the $10 super chat. And yeah, everything is intrinsically connected vibrationally, I would say. But thank you for the support.
Dark matter is important for explaining certain phenomena in the universe, but scientists believe that dark matter might not even exist. So why does Roger Penrose reject Michio Kaku's string?
So, you deny the science. Scientists believe that dark matter may not even exist. Yeah, like pick and choose. The
fantasy is mainly to do with inflation. That's true.
Dark matter is important for explaining certain phenomena in the universe, but scientists believe that dark matter might not even exist. So why does Roger Penrose reject Michio Kaku's string theory? Why does he say that cosmic inflation is a fantasy? What groundbreaking research has Sir Roger Penrose conducted on black holes, and why are scientists still uncertain about the existence of dark matter? Let's dive in to find out. Our universe is composed of matter, which upon closer examination consists of particles. These particles come in various types, such as electrons, quarks, and neutrinos.
Okay, now, again, neutrinos seem to be really like one of the most one of the modalities that interacts with our physical world that's closest to the pure potential modality or state of the background. Just so you know, I'm not going to get into all this, but that's what it actually is, and that's why I say, oh, it can go faster than the speed of light, and oh, it goes through all matter. Yeah, it's the closest to pure potential that we've been able to detect. It's that simple. It's that simple. But when they say, oh, it's made up of particles, just like the other guy said, unless just like a ton of scientists say, and I'm quoting him basically, that what people are calling particles are actually just waves, and it's an emergent property from a background medium. Call it an ether if you would like. Yeah, you don't say.
They move throughout the universe and can interact by exchanging other particles. For instance, the exchange of photons mediates the electromagnetic force. All these distinct particles are accounted for in what we refer to as the Standard Model.
Yeah, and there are actual flat earthers who are supposedly supposed to debate me, but it seems like it never actually happens. But there are actual true earthers, quote unquote, that defend this Standard Model. But by the way, there's no such thing as the photon. There's no evidence for the photon whatsoever. You can get that exact same dot pattern that's observed in the double slit, for example, completely void of light. And what they call the electron dot pattern, an electron is also a reified particle. That's not real. You have to reify to even claim the photon's real. And the photon's nothing more than the intersection of the oscillating electric field and the oscillating magnetic field. So it's like this. That intersection, that event, that process, the intersection, it's an event. Okay? They call that event photon, and they claim that it's like some corporeal physical particle, but it's not. It's just an event. All right, I have a lot to say about a lot of this stuff, so I'll try not to digress too much.
Which is presently our most precise mathematical description of the quantum world. It encompasses two primary categories of particles: fermions, which primarily constitute matter, and bosons, which mainly describe interactions. At first glance, one might assume that this is the ultimate theory, that the Standard Model encompasses everything. However, there is an interaction that this model unfortunately fails to account for: gravity on a large scale. We know that general...
There is a phenomena this model fails to account for, and it's the most important one, the presupposition that's required for the entire model to even begin to exist in theory. It's the fundamental creative force, the primary creative force of all things that coalesces everything into a sphere, even gas inside of a vacuum inexplicably, but it doesn't actually work. Seems legit.
Relativity describes gravity. Objects curve space-time, thereby attracting other objects. Similar to other types of interactions, we anticipate that the curvature of spacetime consists of small particles at the quantum scale called gravitons, which are quanta of spacetime curvature. Nevertheless, when we attempt to incorporate their graviton into the...
It's so funny. Look, experiments show that light is emitted from atoms with discrete energy levels, not continuous, hence the concept that light came in discrete packets. Really, would you like to cite the experiment that showed that light comes in discrete packets from atoms? That would be interesting, because I buried the first section of the oscillating magnetic and electric fields that make up the electromagnetic radiation spectrum. And in fact, it's an excitation of the background medium, concentrated excitation that becomes perceivable. It's nothing more than illumination of what is already there based on a perturbation or disturbance within that pure potential background.
Standard Model. The calculations yield absurd results with infinite values that cannot be eliminated. We are unable to describe gravity at the quantum scale.
This is actually a profound question here, Super Chat. Is light one-dimensional? When it hits the surface, becomes two-dimensional. 1929G, thank you for Super Chat. I would actually say what people call light is actually just illumination, which is a certain perceived version of the background. And the actual background is not dimensional, meaning it isn't Cartesianal. So how we describe dimensions, it doesn't apply to the background. It's non-Cartesian, which is Cartesian, just how our simple minds try to quantify and describe the ideas of like volume, and then you added a fourth dimension of time so that you can try to make your model work within heliocentrism. I would say doesn't become anything. Okay, the material interacts with the excitation, and then that interaction we perceive as that object being lit up. There is no physical corporeal entity traveling, hitting anything with Cartesianal dimensionality. There's no evidence for that. You could get into a lot more profundity with that, but I don't want to get distracted too much.
To tackle this predicament, physicists have been searching for new theories for over half a century. This is where the string theory comes in. The basic concept of the string theory is quite simple. In the standard model, particles are depicted as dimensionless points. We acknowledge that these points do not possess identical properties. In string theory,
Right, dimensionless points that are physical particles. They're just hijacking the background and all of it. And by the way, they don't do this for no reason. It's because all the evidence, the precise measurements and observations and stuff, as some will tell you, quantum mechanics is the most experimentally valid field that exists. Well, we do make very precise, repeated, and replicated observations in quote-unquote quantum mechanics, and it just consistently shows that there's a pure potential background that's void of Cartesian dimensionality.
we assume that this is merely an approximation. If we zoom in on the particles, we postulate that they are all composed of tiny strings, sometimes open and sometimes closed.
Okay, the string theory, it's basically like there's a giant background harp made of billions of strings and they vibrate. It's not entirely wrong in the sense, in my opinion, in the sense that there are longitudinal vibrational compressions and refractions, but yeah,
Ron
like the
Boston
compression and
donated
refraction.
$19.99 through Super Chat. Our bro Witsit and fam is moving at the end of the month. Let's show our support and make this journey happen easy on them.
Thank you, man. Ron Boston, thank you for the super chat and the kind words. Yes, we are aiming to move at the end of this month, and it's been interesting to say the least, but we'll talk about it later. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna skip a little bit here because I didn't watch all this. I just wanted to show you that this guy just like dunks on it. So he's basically just gonna probably tell you a lot of the problems that, you know, people will pretend don't. Or this is all you'll hear back is, oh, Witsit thinks if he finds things at the cutting edge of science we don't understand, then it all must be wrong. Yeah, it is all wrong because the things we're discovering is showing that the fundamental assumptions are incorrect. All right, let's watch a bit of this. Einstein was wrong about our reality. Lex Freeman, which, watch it, I'm manifesting right now. I will sit down on this guy's podcast and have a conversation with him about the Earth.
When you say space-time is doomed, is it the space? Is it the time? Is it the very hard-coded specification of 4 dimensions? Or are you specifically referring to the kind of perceptual domain that humans operate in, which is space-time? You think like there's a 3D, like our world is 3-dimensional and time progresses forward, therefore 3 dimensions plus 1, 4D. What exactly do you mean by space-time? What do you mean by space-time is doomed?
Great. So this is, by the way, not my quote. This is from, for example, Nima Arkani Hamed at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, Ed Witten, also there, David Gross, Nobel Prize winner. So this is not just something the cognitive scientists, this is what the physicists are saying.
Yeah, the physicists are space-time skeptics.
Well, yeah, they're saying that, and I can say exactly why they think it's doomed, but what they're saying is that, because your question was, what aspect of space-time, what are we talking about here? It's both space and time, their union into space-time as in Einstein's theory. That's doomed. Mm-hmm. And they're basically saying that even quantum theory, this is with Nima Arkani Hamed especially, so Hilbert spaces will not be fundamental either. So that the notion of Hilbert space, which is really critical to quantum field theory, quantum information theory, that's not going to figure in the fundamental new laws of physics. So what they're looking for is some new mathematical structures beyond space-time, beyond Einstein's 4-dimensional space-time or supersymmetric version, geometric algebra signature 2,4 kind of. There are different ways that you can represent it, but they're finding new structures. And by the way, they're succeeding now. They found something called the amplituhedron. This is Nima and his colleagues. The cosmological polytope. There are these like polytopes, these polyhedra in multi dimensions, generalizations of simplices that are coding for example, the scattering amplitudes of processes in the Large Hadron Collider and other colliders. So they're finding that if they let go of space-time completely, they're finding new ways of computing these scattering amplitudes that turn literally billions of terms into one term. When you do it in space and time, because it's the wrong framework, It's just a user interface. That's now from the evolutionary point of view. It's just user interface. It's not a deep insight into the nature of reality. So it's missing deep symmetry. It's something called a dual conformal symmetry, which turns out to be true of the scattering data, but you can't see it in space-time. And it's making the computations way too complicated because you're trying to compute all the loops and Feynman diagrams and all the Feynman integrals. So see, the Feynman approach to the scattering amplitudes is trying to enforce two critical properties of space-time: locality and unitarity. And so when you enforce those, you get all these loops and multiple, different levels of loops. And for each you have the notion of locality. You have something deeper, and it's capturing some symmetries that are actually true of the data. But then when you look at the geometry of the facets of these polytopes, then certain of them will code for unitarity and locality. So it actually comes out of the structure of these deep polytopes. So what we're finding is there's this whole new world now beyond space-time that is making explicit symmetries that are true of the data that cannot be seen in space-time.
Okay, pay attention, bro. This is, again, I know a lot of people are like, dude, we're so far in the pseudoscience. That's true, we are. But this is relatively speaking, we're showing with specificity the flaws in this belief system and how it's a religion. If you still adhere to this, really pay attention to this because there is no way out of it.
And that is turning the computations from billions of terms to one or two or a handful of terms. So we're getting insights into symmetries, and all of a sudden the math is becoming.
Wait a minute. So there's a model that uses relativity in space-time, and in order to try to compute this evidence that we actually can tangibly and physically replicate and observe, it requires billions and billions of computations, but throwing it out, you can actually simplify it to a single computational equation that applies to the observations that can be replicated. I wonder which one we should lean towards.
Simple, because we're not doing something silly. We're not adding up all these loops in space-time. We're doing something far deeper. But they don't know what this world is about. So, they're in an interesting position where we know that space-time is doomed, and I should probably tell you why it's doomed, what they're saying about why it's doomed. But they need a flashlight to look beyond space-time. What flashlight are we going to use to look into the dark beyond space-time? Because Einstein's theory and quantum theory can't tell us what's beyond them. All they can do is tell us that when you put us together, space-time is doomed at 10 to the...
It's a pure potential state that is the background medium, and there has to be a primary mover within that medium. There's your theory of everything. It all is geometric. It's all vibrational displacement, i.e. pressure mediation. It's so hard to come up with a theory of everything. How are we ever going to do it?
Minus 33 centimeters, 10 to the minus 43 seconds. Beyond that, space-time doesn't even make sense. It just has no operational definition. So, but it doesn't tell you what's beyond. And so they're just looking for deep structures, like guessing. It's really fun. So these really brilliant guys, generic, brilliant men and women who are doing this work, physicists, are making guesses about these structures, informed guesses, because they're trying to ask, well, okay, what deeper structure could give us the stuff that we're seeing in space-time, but without certain commitments that we have to make in space-time, like locality. So they make these brilliant guesses, and of course, most of the time you're going to be wrong. But once you get one or two that start to pay off, and then you get some lucky breaks. So they got a lucky break back in 1986. A couple of mathematicians named Park and Taylor took the scattering amplitude for 2 gluons coming in at high energy and 4 gluons going out at low energy. So that kind of scattering thing. So it's like, apparently for people who are into this, that's sort of something that happens so often you need to be able to find it and get rid of those because you already know about that and you need to. So you needed to compute them. It was billions of terms. And they couldn't do it, even for the supercomputers couldn't do that for the many billions or millions of times per second they needed to do it. So they begged, the experimentalists begged the theorists, please, you got it. And so Park and Taylor took the billions of terms, hundreds of pages, and miraculously turned it into 9. And then a little bit later, they guessed one term expression that turned out to be equivalent. So billions of terms reduced to one term, the so-called famous Park-Taylor formula, 1986. And that was like, okay, where did that come from? What? This is a pointer into a deep realm beyond space and time, but no one mean, what can you do with it? And they thought maybe...
Oh, I know what you can do with it. You can throw out your dogmatic religious presuppositions and accept that there's actually a primary mover within a fluid-like medium with pure potential, and that the Earth is in the center of this torus field that creates the geometric fractal nature of all things, which is a conjugate geometric expression that can literally be identified from the small to the big scale. What can you do with it? Oh, I don't know. Stop being a materialistic psychopath and just accept the evidence for what it states. Oh, there were billions of computations that could be more accurately denoted with an equivalent singular equation, and the supercomputers couldn't even work out the fantastical reified loops of space-time because it required billions and billions of computations, and we found out that there's actually a much simpler singular equation that does account for it, and it actually points to something significantly deeper that exists outside of these reified concepts called space and time. But what do you do with it? I think it's pretty obvious what you do with it.
Was a one-off, but then other formulas started coming up, and then eventually Nima Arkani Hamed and his team found this thing called the amplitude-hedron, which really sort of captures the whole, a big part of the whole ball of wax. I'm sure they would say, no, there's plenty more to do. So I won't say they did it all by any means. They're looking at the cosmological polytope as well. So what's remarkable to me is that two pillars of modern science, quantum field theory with gravity on the one hand, and evolution by natural selection on the other, just in the last 20 years have very clearly said space-time has had a good run. Reductionism has been a fantastic methodology. So we had a great ontology of space-time.
It hasn't had a good run. It hasn't worked since its inception. And reductionism hasn't worked since its inception. So how's it been a good run? It's been a complete waste of time that results in intellectual stagnancy that plagues humanity and has serious, dire philosophical implications.
A great methodology of reductionism. Now it's time for a new trick. But now you need to go deeper.
Dude, it had such a good run that it doesn't work at all, and we had to just ignore the problems for over a century.
Is that two pillars of modern science. Ontology of space-time, a great methodology of reductionism. Now it's time for a new trick. But now you need to go deeper and show, but by the way, this doesn't mean we throw away everything we've done, not by a long shot.
No, we shouldn't throw away the observational evidence. We should throw away the stupid, materialistic, presupposed, reified, interpretive framework so that we can actually make progress.
Idea that we come up with beyond space-time must project precisely into space-time, and it better give us back everything that we know and love in space-time, or generalizations. Or
new trick? How about no tricks this time? Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty funny.
Or it's not going to be taken seriously, and it shouldn't be. So we have a strong constraint on whatever.
If it can't do the same predictions as space-time, then it's not going to be taken seriously, and it shouldn't be. Oh, well, that's funny. So first of all, what you're implying is that we should actually hold on to something we know isn't true until you consider the replacement sufficient, because it can therefore explain all your other presuppositions you refuse to re-examine. How about we don't listen to you because you're ridiculous? Secondly, it's effortless to make every single prediction that space-time makes because he stole it from Henri Poincaré, and there's actually a Lorentzian etheric version of this geometry that's called space-time that is the exact equivalent of all physical predictions, which means it also is incorrect because there is a non-Cartesian background medium void of dimensionality that is pure potential, seemingly intrinsically tied to consciousness, by the way, but that's super profound, and there's a primary mover within it, and that you cannot in any way bottle this up to a Cartesian concept of time and space, and that is the reality of the situation. I've said it many times. I'm not claiming to know all the answers. I am actually openly stating that this is such a profound idea that I think it begins to venture into Yah territory, God territory. You'll never know all the answers, but you will never begin to even have a coherent glimpse into the answers until you update away from your dogmatic religious script. It's very simple. Yes, I'm going to repeat this again. Well, it won't even be considered until it can make all the predictions that space-time does. Again, Einstein stole space-time geometry from Henri Poincaré, who literally proposed the geometry of space-time, and you have a Lorentzian ether version of that, which is experimentally identical in prediction, only more sufficient and viable because of the logical coherency of it. But it's still wrong because it also imposes the limitation of dimensionality and Cartesian comprehension or interpretation onto this world, which is integrated physically and metaphysically. I know that's a lot. I'm sorry. I play it back, right? And there will never be a rebuttal uttered to what I just said, by the way. There is a Lorentzian etheric version of the space-time geometry which is physically identical in prediction experimentally. This is a fact, bro. It is completely a fact. You might want to say, well, then why wasn't that entertained? Because it means the Earth's in the center. If there's a substantive background that is akin to an ether, then you have a problem. The Earth can't be flying around the sun, so it can't even be entertained. Okay, well, you're a weird, creepy, religious zealot. So just stay over there, bro. Some of us just want to figure out what's going on, bro. So, and most people don't know about that. But you can look it up, Henri Poincaré. And of course, to quote him, he said, "It is not the universe which imposes space and time on us, but rather, due to convenience, it is us who imposes them on the universe. They're just conceptual abstractions, and the limitation in which they carry with them are ignorant. They're ignorant. They're just like human convenience that results in stagnancy. That's all it is.
Whatever we're going to do beyond."
Again, to clarify, the guy that created the very geometry of space and time that Einstein stole said, space and time are just concepts. It's not the universe which imposes space and time on us, but rather us who impose it on it.
On space-time. It needs to project into space-time. And whatever this deeper theory is, it may not itself have evolution by natural selection. This may not be part of this deeper realm. But when we take whatever that thing is beyond space-time and project it into space-time, it has to look like evolution by natural selection, or it's wrong. So that's a strong constraint on this work.
So even the evolution.
And what they mean by natural selection and evolution is that each individual entity or organism is built with information inside of it that can become active and react to its environment, which also necessitates a creator. People that make mistakes in evolution debates, I'm all over the place. You guys, I've been gone for a while, so you guys are getting the machine gun. You guys are getting all kinds of... The people that creationists, the mistake that creationists make in evolution debates is they yield microevolution to people. No, that's a ridiculous term. They yield adaptation to people. No, okay, not in the evolutionary definition of adaptation. No, you don't get that, because the truth of the matter is whenever an organism reacts to its environment to better survive, which has been validated with epigenetics, by the way, it shows that that organism already had the capability to react to its environment beneficially, meaning it is actually proof of creationism because it requires some type of intentional sourcing for that information to be embedded into that organism and remain dormant until it is needed. It is actually proof of creation. There will never be a rebuttal to that either, by the way. So I'm giving you guys freaking just like death blows. Just say this to people and watch them freak out. They'll call you names. They'll change the subject. They'll just say, nuh-uh. They'll be like, prove it. Be like, wait, prove what? Did you comprehend what I just said? Can you rebut it? Can you interpret it? You'll just get all kinds of fallacies and diversions and obfuscation and attempts to discredit you and blah, blah, blah. That's how you know they can't rebut what you said. And that's why we get heliocentric, globalist, consistently using those fallacies. It's basically a concession. It's like tapping out intellectually.
Evolution by natural selection and quantum field theory could be interfaces into something that doesn't look anything like you mentioned. I mean, it's interesting to think that evolution might be a very crappy interface into something much deeper.
That's right. They're both telling us that the framework that you've had can only go so far, and it has to stop. And there's something beyond. And that framework, the very framework that is space and time itself. Now, of course, evolution by natural selection is not telling us about like Einstein's relativistic space-time. So that was another question.
And he goes on to describe, but rather it's the concepts of space and time we use to interpret everything. And Einstein just basically developed that into a physical application. This guy is a psychologist, and he has experience with certain physicists, cognitive science, evolution. So we have top tier evolutionists sitting here saying, oh, turns out that what we thought about evolution and space-time and everything, these concepts is actually kind of pointing to something much deeper, and that just seems to be some rigid, rudimentary interface that humans have come up with. Yeah, you don't say. You're trying to explain things that do not exist. They are nothing more than arrogant materialistic interfaces. All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, so I want to play a little bit more of this one, and then I'll just come chat with you guys.
Field that they have neither the time nor the inclination to revisit the historical and political context, the assumptions that were made, the clash of personalities, and the excellent arguments against the theory of relativity. Yet these are requirements of the scientific method when no progress is being made, a re-examination of how and why we accepted a theory. Scientists and mathematicians today assume that all that has gone before is flawless, and they can therefore proceed safely without a backward glance. They and most of their teachers remain unaware of the hidden, unstated assumptions that are inherent in every scientific field. With awareness, the mysteries of the universe, like dark matter and dark energy, can be seen as mere artifacts of the invalid concepts of relativity theory.
Correct.
In his 1916 work, The Foundation of the General Theory of Relativity, Einstein states, "If a system of coordinates k is chosen so that in relation to it physical laws hold good in their simplest form, the same laws also hold good in relation to any other system of coordinates, k dashed, moving in uniform translation relatively to k. This postulate we call the special principle of relativity. Simply restate,
That is, of course, K prime.
This is the first postulate of special relativity. The laws of physics are the same in all inertial frames of reference. But orbiting planets and quantum experiments show that there is a real-time connection between widely separated matter in the universe."
Yeah, and it's of course what they call matter with their assumed distances, but the principle is still the same, is that things that appear to be much further away, they all are connected, and more specifically, they all move in specific relation to the Earth.
The fixed stars can be regarded as an absolute frame of reference, which returns us to classical physics and Ernst Mach's principle that relates the motion of the local inertial frame to the distant stars.
And if you are new, we have covered Mach's principle and how actually a geocentric stationary Earth is entirely viable even within the Newtonian, Einsteinian frameworks. And in fact, if you believe in both of them, you must acknowledge that a stationary Earth is valid. Of course, we don't believe in any of those stupid, nonsensical ideas. It seems like everything's fluid-like and maybe plasma more dense, much more local and contained. Everything moves in relation with angular momentum around the Earth. Oh, how dare you. Word salad.
Inertial frames moving relative to each other will have different velocities with respect to the absolute frame of reference of the distant stars and are therefore not equivalent.
And let me actually point this out. My boy Alan from Space Audits just presented his presentation on Globebusters. And it specifically refutes this postulate, right? This special principle of relativity, the fundamental postulate that, of course, GR is then built upon. But then, by the way, he actually alters the other fundamental postulate, claiming that there is no unlimited validity that can be claimed for the finite constancy of light in a vacuum, which is the next postulate of special relativity. But what is so interesting is that this requires there be no preferred reference frame. That's what this is saying. All reference frames are equally valid. There is no preferred. Yet, to utilize what people call GPS, and you can ask Ron Hatch about this as well, there's a preferred direction on the Earth where the light propagates more effectively. So that debunks all of this. I mean, we haven't even been trying to debunk his theory because it doesn't even deserve to be granted the foundation as if it needs to be debunked. But it's impossible to even just kind of explain it without debunking it. It's that ridiculous.
And so the laws of physics are the same in all inertial frames of reference. But orbiting planets and quantum experiments show that there is a real-time connection between widely separated matter in the universe. The fixed stars can be regarded as an absolute frame of reference, which returns us to classical physics and Ernst Mach's principle that relates the motion of the local inertial frame to the distant stars. Inertial frames moving relative to each other will have different velocities with respect to the absolute frame of reference of the distant stars and are therefore not equivalent. Einstein's first postulate, his special principle of relativity, is invalid.
Yeah, and that's within their assumptions, because Mach also said that it was just an assumption that space was absolute and fixed in and of itself, and that assumption renders Newtonian application fundamentally fallacious and inept.
In 1907, Einstein realized that the feeling a person gets when being pulled to the Earth by gravity is identical in nature to that which he gets while accelerating. He dubbed this conjecture the principle of equivalence. However, with an absolute frame of reference, they are not equivalent. Of course, this doesn't begin to explain how gravity works. Einstein, with the help of a mathematician friend named Marcel Grossmann, confused the issue terminally by fiddling with the normal concepts of space and time. Mathematically, it may be permissible to label a graph of time intervals to read past, present and future, but physically there is only now. The passage of time is universal when all matter is connected in real time. Time cannot be slowed or sped up. It is dimensionless. It has no arrow. There is no space-time, no fourth dimension.
That's correct. It's merely conceptual. Literally, dude. What we call time is just how we quantify change and motion. And the way we quantify it comes from the motion we see in the sky. That is it. It is how we are limited to perceiving existence. We're like, oh, well, people die, people age, plants grow, plants die. The sky, the wheel in the sky keeps on turning, right? Like, it's just a concept.
In real time, at least on a galactic scale, should never have been in dispute, since Newton's law of gravity, which is derived directly from observations, is instantaneous. His well-known equation doesn't include...
This is another...
include time.
Boom! I didn't even watch this, dude. Check this.
That the universe is a system connected effectively in real time, at least on a galactic scale, should never have been in dispute, since Newton's law of gravity, which is derived directly from observations, is instantaneous. His well-known equation doesn't include time.
Dude, I'm giving you so many things that no one will ever rebut. Just like, watch this video, write down the times I said no one will ever respond to this, no one will ever rebut this. Just understand the phrases, and then when the subject comes on, bring the idea to the person, and you win the debate right then. Like, I'm not just saying that, okay? I'm happy to be proven wrong. I've never seen it. So, for example, this is one of them. Wait a minute. Is gravity instant? No, gravity's not instant because no information can go faster than the speed of light. So gravity's not instant. So then how come the gravitational equation doesn't have a time variable? Because according to Newtonian equation, the law of gravitation, it is instant because there's no time variable included in the equation, which means it's instant. Which means Newton himself, and that's why he was so perplexed. He's like, the idea that gravity is acting from one piece of matter onto another piece of innate brute matter through the vastness of great distances in a vacuum, instantaneously with no medium exchanging the interaction is, to me, so great an absurdity that no man with competent faculty of thinking in philosophical matters could ever fall into it. Please do not attribute this to me, and whether this is a material or immaterial exchange or medium, I've left to the consideration of my readers. Dude, Newton, real, fake, propped up, whatever, he was significantly more competent than people that push these ideas now, and that's why on the final page that wasn't actually published in Newton's Principia, he says, and I think it was Proposition 43 or Theorem 22, those might be in reverse, where he specifically states, with all that being said beforehand, on this final page, I would like to inform you that actually the Earth could be in the center if there was something akin to gravitation, meaning similar to what I'm calling gravitation, but there was an equal and opposite reaction. It would actually allow for the Earth to be in the center, similar to the Tychonic system. And that's what I'm telling you. He wasn't wrong, because if you have a medium, any action within that medium causes a reaction, just like throwing a pebble into a pond. What they're calling hijacking, calling gravitation, is in fact an action and reaction within this field, this background, this medium. Okay, that means the Earth has to be in the center. Not only that it could be, it has to be. It has to be. In 2023, you can say definitively that if there is an action and reaction of what people call gravitation, it must be that the Earth is in the center. Okay? It's just the way that it is. Now, once you have to accept and acknowledge that the Earth's in the center, and that geocentrism is significantly more valid, and all evidence ever has shown and it can never be disproven, and you just accept facts for what they are, you're going to fall down a rabbit hole, because you're going to soon find out the Earth's actually a stationary topographical plane. It's within a contained system, and it seems to be within a torus field. We may live in the inertial plane through a sphere, but not on one. And it isn't just a sphere hanging there in the middle of nothing with everything moving around it. Rather, it is a foundational Earth where everything moves in relation to its central points. And the Earth is basically in the center of all the cosmos movement. That's very profound. It has incredible philosophical implications, incredible implications and ramifications on how we interpret physics. It is incredibly important. It can't be understated. And if you refuse to address the evidence because you hate the idea that there's a creator, or you hate the idea of science have wasted the last century and some, you're in a cult. That is a religion. So you get it.
Observations show that the Earth is drawn to the instantaneous position of the Sun and not where it appears in the sky 8 minutes later. In the book Space, Time and Gravitation, the prominent English astrophysicist Sir Arthur...
There is density, which is a vibrational frequency. Gravity is imagination. Just again to clarify, gravity is gravitas, which means heavy, so things have certain heaviness or what we call weight. And yes, density is vibrational because everything's intrinsically vibrational. But here's my question for you. What is the causal agent of density? Sorry, like I said, I know I've been stepping away, so I'm giving you guys all the work. We've actually got a lot covered in less than 2 hours so far. But so, okay, it's all just density. Okay, so what is density? Can we define density? Well, it's defined as mass over volume. So the amount of matter is a certain volume. So a certain amount of quote unquote space. Volume. The volume of this Sharpie or highlighter has a certain amount of matter inside of it. Now, if I got the same exact size of gold, it would have a different density. Okay, so it's amount of matter and set amount of volume, or compactness of matter in that volume. How compactly the matter's held together is what density is. Okay, so density is how compactly the matter is held together within a certain volume. So here's the question. Then what is the cause of density? It has to be whatever is holding the matter together. What is holding the matter together? Electrostatics. You can't even invoke density without electrostatics, which is actually intrinsically, in my opinion, etheric vibrational displacement. People are like, oh, you can't believe in electrostatics, you don't believe in the atomic model. That's a cool story. Electrostatics is a real physical phenomenon that you can manipulate and prove exists, can prove is the cause of certain effects, including changing objects' weight and directionality and or vector. But the question is, what exactly is it? Well, it does seem to be intrinsically vibrational. And when you said density is vibrational, you aren't wrong, but it's intrinsically electric and vibrational because electrostatics is intrinsically vibrational displacement. That was a lot, but for all the people that say it's density only, just ask them, well, can you define density? Since you're invoking it, what is density? They're going to have to define it as the compactness of matter, because a certain amount of matter in a certain volume. Like, okay, so then what's the cause of density? It has to be whatever's holding the matter together, right? And then what causes or what holds the matter together? Electrostatics. You can't even invoke density without electrostatics. So the primary cause is actually electrostatics. So
Eddington discusses this problem. He notes that if gravity propagated with finite velocity, the motion of the planets around the Sun would become unstable due to a torque acting on the planets. The problem was already known to
Yo, actually, I want to say this to you guys too. This is where it gets super profound. Okay, check this. They're like, oh, Wisdom said he doesn't believe in the atomic model. These are like true flat earthers, right? Wisdom said he doesn't believe in the atomic model. How's he invoking electrostatics as if that's some type of rebuttal? It's a complete red herring. You're just afraid to address the point, but that's what you have to do, and you can't debate the point. But this is what's so very profound for those that are here for the profundity, okay? And again, I'm just hoping that I'm throwing this out into the ether, and the people way smarter than me hear it, and then they go change the world, or they come correct me or fill me in, or we just grow together or whatever, right? So I'm confident, don't take that as arrogance, but this is pretty profound to me. Okay, so I don't believe in the periodic chart. I don't believe in the elements, and I don't believe in the atomic model. I believe in the phenomena. I don't believe in the interpretation, just like I believe in the phenomena of what people call electrons and photons and protons and neutrons, but I don't believe in what they call them or what they define them as. I don't believe in the interpretation, but I don't dispute the phenomena. And if you are to say that I can't address the phenomena unless I believe in your reified conceptual interpretation, that's called an all or nothing fallacy. I must either believe all that you say about it, or I can't acknowledge the phenomena. All or nothing fallacy, very remedial. But this is what's so interesting. I don't believe in the atomic model or the current understanding of elements or the periodic chart, but I lean more towards like a Walter Russell periodic chart, okay, that everything's intrinsically vibrational. So check this out. So what are we calling density of elements? What are we calling density, right? Well, we say that it's the compactness of matter. So check this. Make sure I don't show in front of that, but okay. All right, look. Okay, See the two waveforms? See that one is much more compact than the other one. Everything's intrinsically vibration. Vibration is displacement, oscillation, back and forth, frequency, vibration, oscillation, disturbance, perturbation. Okay, and not that those are all synonyms, but they're all tied together to what the background does. But here's the point. So we have a waveform that's real wide like this, real wide. And then we have another waveform that's... Now, waves are concepts we use to quantify and describe motion. It's just a type of motion. It's just back and forth transverse motion, okay? That is what we call density, bro. The compactness of the waveform or the vibration itself. That's it. That's how we get compactness of matter. Matter is a modality of vibrational displacement of the background. So density, compactness, is actually the vibration and how compact the vibration is, right? Like if you have 1 foot and you have 10 waving motions, and then you have 1 foot and you have 100, well, the 100 is much more compact, right? You have way more waving, so it's more compact. That's what it is. And I hope that doesn't go past you, because that is actually very profound, because that has serious implications, right? That means everything's intrinsically vibration, and specifically vibrational displacement, which is what pressure mediation is the primary causal agent of all physical, naturally occurring observable phenomena. This begins to spill over into all kinds of things, which means seemingly matter is a different modality of the same primary source that everything is, including light. That would actually mean that matter itself is a modality of light, seemingly a condensed version of light. All right, I'm open to your guys' feedback, but that's what hit me the other day, and I thought that was pretty profound. Let's move on.
Newton, and was examined by Laplace, who calculated a value far faster than the speed of light. This fact alone means that Einstein's theory of relativity is reduced to merely providing a perspective on objects moving with respect to an observer who relies on cosmically slow light or radio signals to make observations. Einstein's second postulate says the speed of light in free space has the same value, c, in all inertial frames of reference. Once again, experiment shows this to be false. The speed of light has been found to vary, so that the standard meter is now defined in terms of the wavelength of light to force c to be a constant. But simple observation shows that the speed of light is different in air, water, and a vacuum. The vacuum must be a material medium. Space is not empty. An ether medium, as it was called, is essential in the electromagnetic theory of James Maxwell and Oliver Heaviside. Heaviside wrote, "Ether is a very wonderful thing. It may exist only in the imaginations of the wise, being invented and endowed with properties to suit their hypotheses, but we cannot do without it. How is energy to be transmitted through space without a medium? Yet..."
Now here's the deal. I kind of agree but disagree, right? So yes, what people call the ether, and certainly at the time of Oliver Heaviside, who was definitely a genius, by the way, if you ever read his works, I disagree with him on tons of things, and actually he's one of the primary reasons for the ionosphere, right? But this is interesting, right? So let's read it. Yet, on the other hand, gravity appears to be independent of time. Perhaps this is an illusion, but admitting the ether to propagate gravity instantaneously, it must have wonderful properties unlike anything we know. I don't want to miss the context. Okay, let's go through this. Again, Oliver Heaviside was very brilliant, but just like I'm wrong about things, everyone's wrong about things. Oliver Heaviside was smarter than me. He's wrong about some stuff here. So, ether is a very wonderful thing. It may exist only in the imaginations of the wise. Well, why does he say that? See, people used to be way more elegant with how they spoke and articulated themselves. He's very particular with every word. So he said, it may only exist in the imaginations of the wise. Okay, he's saying that because wisdom and discernment, logical deduction, sound reasoning dictates that nothing cannot exist. So what is it that is sustaining what we call electromagnetic energy? There must be something. There can't be nothing. Right? When we see this waving motion, well, waving is just a type of movement. So what is moving? Again, it can't be nothing. So what is it? What's sustaining it? Okay, that's what he means by of the wise. Now, the imagination part he means, I would assume, is, well, they had a specific interpretation of the ether, right? And they've just come up with the idea, being invented and endowed with properties to suit their hypotheses. But we cannot do without it. Of course, you can't do without it logically. And now in 2023, we've shown you can't do without it in terms of physics in any avenue. How is energy to be transmitted through space without a medium? Now, I fundamentally disagree with him here. I don't think energy is transmitted through space without a medium. I don't think that energy is transmitted. I don't think that light propagates and travels. When I say propagation of light, I'm using it for intents and purposes. Let me come over here. This is where I disagree with them. How is energy to be transmitted through space without a medium? I don't agree with that. I don't think that what we call light or whatever, I don't think it permeates space. I don't think ether permeates space. And I don't think things permeate ether. The ether's already there. And everything is the same thing, but different modalities from this primary substance, which I agree is it has a tenuity beyond comprehension. Think of like the most thin gaseous substance you can think of, but way thinner than that. It's the primary substance, and then everything is kind of pulled from this primary substance, which is like a fluid medium. Everything's pulled from it. Okay, I don't think that things permeate through it though, and I think that in 2023 we have substantial amount of evidence that he didn't even necessarily have access to, which shows us it doesn't. Okay. It's a rate of induction. It's an excited, perturbed form of the background light, and it is induced back into its original form, or the ether, the background medium, right? That's it. And so it's not permeating from A to B, right? But that movement will be perceived as if it is permeating, okay? Now, permeability is interesting when we get into all this because there seems to be a bridge between the material and the immaterial. And so what is permeability? But we are so ingrained with the idea that everything is Cartesianal and dimensional and we can quantify everything with Cartesian coordinate systems that's why people can't wrap their mind around this background, because it's not Cartesianal. It's not confined to our limited interpretations or frameworks of mathematics. You cannot quantify the immaterial, which means that's it. You can't quantify the immaterial. That doesn't mean that it's not there. What's it is Dunning-Kruger. Very profound input. Thank you so much for that. So I know that was a lot, and this is like more of like a deeper point, but I disagree with Heaviside on that. But I would suggest if people are interested in this, you can go to my Telegram. I have a lot of documents. I may have to re-upload them, but for sure by the end of the night, if I can remember to do it, I'll have all the documents for free, PDFs in there. And it's like tons of all our Heaviside work, and you should check it out. Also, Charles Protosteinman's, blah, blah, blah. And you'll see that we've only regressed. All right, I'm all over the place, but hopefully that made sense. That's what I disagree with him on, is this idea that energy is transmitted through space. I don't think that ether is in space. I think space is just a concept of our material Cartesianal existence that we try to quantify. And really, there is a non-Cartesianal pure potential source or background that all of this resides within, but not within in a Cartesianal sense. I know this is super deep. I'd have to do a whole stream, so let's just move on.
We cannot do without it. How is energy to be transmitted through space without a medium? Yet, on the other hand, gravity appears to be independent of time. Perhaps this is an illusion. But admitting the ether to propagate gravity instantaneously, it must have wonderful properties, unlike anything we know. Einstein's second postulate required a magic...
So I just told people not to time people out, but I'm going to let this guy know in here. Like, the only thing that you can get timed out for is just like spamming insults in the chat. If you just spam insults in the chat, and this goes for both sides, like, don't take the bait, don't engage with them really. If you're gonna, don't be personal, and if you're just gonna spam insults in the chat, you're not here with good intentions or good faith, and you're just kind of ruining the chat. I'm not gonna put slow mode on because you can't behave yourself as an adult. So that's the only rule: is no super degenerate, toxic, spamming insults. It's the only thing that you'll get timed out or banned for. Do not ever time people out for their ideas. I encourage differences in ideas. All right, that was my warning to the guy in here who's literally spamming insults.
Magical ether to keep the speed of light constant in all frames of reference, regardless of their motion. In an address on the 5th of May, 1920 at the University of Leiden in Holland, he said, "This ether may not be thought of as endowed with the quality characteristic of ponderable media, as consisting of parts which may be tracked through time. The idea of motion may not be applied to it."
This ether, this is Einstein, this ether may not be thought of as endowed with the quality of characteristic of ponderable media as consisting of parts which may be tracked through time. The idea of motion may not be applied to it. Wrong. You know, when he says ponderable media, obviously he means like mediums that we interpret, because this is like what QE would tell you, like, it has to be material. Like, okay, cool story, bro. Ponderable media meaning material, but it does have substantive like qualities akin to ponderable media. But for his theory to explain away the evidence to show the Earth is in the center, he had to state this. So he said there has to be an ether, and its existence is actually continued by relativity, but it can't be anything like what we thought it was, meaning he had to say there was physical properties. beyond the material 3 dimensions, or he couldn't explain the motion of things. So he had to invoke an ether in that sense, and that's why he defines himself. He says, when we say ether, we mean nothing more than it must be endowed with physical properties. He needed physical properties, but he needed it to not have substance, and it couldn't be akin to ponderable media or medium that we observe in the natural world, right? It couldn't be like that because it meant that the earth was in the center, and that was, of course, not even an option. That was the whole reason that he was deployed, in my opinion. So that is where you get this conundrum. And when people try to say ether is an Einsteinian idea, they don't understand it. They don't actually know what they're saying. It is distinctly different. And so he had to find a way to get physical properties tucked in here, right? I know we're all over the place, but this is a lot of stuff. He had to find a way to invoke physical properties because he couldn't explain phenomena without it. He couldn't even explain like what we see in the sky or anything, right? What he couldn't have like what normally is required for physical properties, which is something, an actual thing, and not thing as in an objectified materialistic interpretation, but there has to actually be something with substance, substantive value. Now people will say, oh, substance means material, and that's why I normally say, I'm very particular with my words, and I'll say substantive qualities, meaning it has the qualities of substance, right? Meaning it's like actual. And Tesla said it was actually a gaseous-like substance with tenuity beyond comprehension, and that makes sense to me. That's why we see air and we think that's all that's there, and we suck a lot of the air out, and we're like, oh, well, there's just a little bit of air there, but that's it. Well, what's the air within? Nothing can exist. There has to be something that you're not going to be able to pull out. It has to be the fundamental fabric, because it can't be nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. And the air doesn't just expand automatically in the vacuum chamber to fill all of the vacuum chamber up. We can literally measure the pressure, right? So there's something else there. And long story short, he had to invoke physical properties to be able to explain motion, right? He had to have a mechanism for motion, Einstein that is. So it has to have physical properties. And that's why he's like, oh, well, I would have been better off if I had asserted the non-existence of an ether drift rather than outright asserting the non-existence of an ether, because I've discovered that we do in fact need an ether because my theory requires it, and it requires it because any theory of physics will require physical properties to explain the motion observed. Therefore, there is an ether, and its story is by no means finished, but rather continued by relativity. These are all basically direct quotes from Einstein. It is in no way finished, but it's basically continued by relativity, because I see that when we say ether, we mean nothing more than endowed with physical properties. Oh, according to Einstein, he's going to redefine what it means so that he can make it fit within his framework. Okay, so he reluctantly acknowledged that he was wrong initially, and he had to say there was an ether in the sense that there had to be physical properties because it was needed, and he had no choice but to try to attribute them to concepts, because if you attribute them to actual things or anything defined as something substantive, then it means the Earth's in the center. Can't explain Michelson morally without the Earth being in the center. So that's why he used space and time. So hopefully that landed with you guys. He had to use space and time because these concepts don't have substantive, real, actual physical qualities. They're reified concepts. So he attributed physical properties to there, but it had no physical implications on his theory because, well, they're just concepts. So it was like the most ingenious wizardry sleight of hand trick ever pulled off on the masses. And it's still in play today, but it's crumbling. It's because lies can only last so long. And so now tons of people that are trying to make it work just are showing it doesn't work, bro. It doesn't work. So that's why it's the end of Einstein. But hopefully that was edifying for some.
But there is no medium incapable of motion. Such a medium could not transmit energy.
Exactly. This person is pretty on point, right? So he says right here, this ether may not be thought of as endowed with the quality characteristic of ponderable media, as consisting of parts which may be tracked through time. Now, this is a concept, right? It's actually how we track motion, but the idea of motion may not be applied to it. Why? Because it would mean that the Earth's in the center, but you can't have a medium without motion being able to be applied to it. And that's actually what waves are. They're waving motion, movement of the medium, right? So he said, that's what he's saying right here in really simple layman terms is, yeah, there's basically a medium, we can call it space-time, but it's not like any medium that anyone can conceive of, and it can't have motion applied to it, and it's not actual, and it's not substantive, and it's made up of only two things, and those are merely concepts. But trust me, it's there. That's what he's saying. It's absolutely ridiculous.
As consisting of parts which may be tracked through time, the idea of motion may not be applied to it. But there is no medium incapable of motion. Such a medium could not transmit energy through space, since energy is matter in some form of motion with respect to Mach's absolute frame of reference. Earlier in the address, Einstein noted the characteristics required of the medium to satisfy Maxwell and Heaviside. It appeared beyond question that light must be interpreted as a vibratory process in an elastic, inert medium filling up universal space. It also seemed to be a necessary consequence of the fact that light is capable of polarization, that this medium, the ether, must be of the nature of a solid body, because transverse waves are not possible in a fluid, but only in a solid. The error here is to refer to a solid. What is required is an electrically neutral but polarizable medium of almost zero mass.
And that just means a tenuity beyond comprehension, like Tesla said, right? It appeared beyond question that light must be interpreted as a vibratory process in an elastic, inert medium filling up universal space. This is where people mess up, though. It doesn't fill up space. Space is our Cartesian concept to describe our material existence, okay? We come up with the idea of space because, like, if I have a garage and then I park the car in the garage, it has to be in the garage. It has a certain amount of dimensions, length, width, breadth, or height. That's what we've come up with. Like, when I was talking to, it's just one of those nights, you guys take it or leave it. So that's when I was talking to PhD astronomer Professor Parks, right? And I'm like, wait, how can you attribute physical properties, conceptual abstractions like space? Space is a privation. It's just a concept we came up with. Length, width, height, length, width, breadth. Like, that's just concepts we came up with to describe things. It's very useful. It's beneficial. But can you hand me an inch? Can you hand me length? Of course not. It's just a concept. And then he picked up a book, which mine are all over there. He picked up a book. Let me go grab a book just because. Pick up a book none other than by Stephen Hawking about Einstein. So he's like, this is space. I'm like, no, that's a book. He's like, no, but this is space. It has length. And I'm like, no. You're making my point. That's a book. Okay? You describe it with dimensions. It supposedly fills space, but it isn't space. That's what fills the space. So when you're like, how do you attribute physical properties to space? People are like, space isn't. I'm like, space is just emptiness. It's nothingness. It's a privation. It's just an idea of nothing, absence of. And then we quantify that area or volume with nothing in it. And they're like, no, space isn't empty. I'm like, no. Either something is in space or it's not. Space isn't what's in it. It's so stupid. And this is a PhD astronomer. No disrespect. I like him. I like you, Professor Parks. But that's ridiculous. This is not space. This is a book. It's a book, bro. It's a book. Come on, man. This is a book. Okay, it supposedly fills space. Just a concept. So you can't attribute physical properties to the concepts we use to describe this material book, length, width, and height. Like, that's just a concept. It's called a reification fallacy, misplaced concreteness. Attributing physical properties or concreteness to a concept, misplaced concreteness. It's called a reification fallacy. So objects are in the space. Yeah, and with the concept. And the reason this is profound is because we're talking about something very deep. This stream, and a lot of it is not for everybody. Trust me. It's definitely not for people that can't accept the earth is in the center. So he says, it appeared beyond question that light must be interpreted as a vibratory process in an elastic inert medium filling up universal space. Almost correct, right? Light is a vibratory process, right? In an elastic, sure, why not? Inert medium, but it doesn't fill up universal space, bro. It's non-Cartesian. It's everywhere, but there is no where. It is the infinite source of pure potential that everything comes from. It is beyond our material, quantifiable comprehension. That's why Tesla said it has a tenuity beyond comprehension, beyond conception. Okay.
There seemed to be a necessary consequence of the fact that light is capable of polarization.
Oh, sorry. I think we're standing on the shoulders of giants, but I don't agree with Maxwell and Heaviside's interpretation of the ether at the time. I don't think things permeate through ether or that ether permeates through space. I don't agree with that at all, right? I think that it's an infinite pure potential background.
Boston Bear donated $49.99 through Super Chat. You share truth that is helping many wake up. Anyone that doesn't understand this about you has some issues to work through. You are also spitting by fire, bringing clarity, and slaying deceptions.
Thank you, brother. Very kind words. Run Boston Bears, one of the realest ones I know. Thank you for the very generous $50 super chat, brother, and the kind words. I'm sure a lot of people would definitely disagree with you, but it's all good. So yeah, I'm saying I don't agree that ether permeates space or anything like that, right? Like, I think that it is kind of like the canvas, and there's a painter, and it's the creator, and it's the primary mover that sets motion to within this canvas, which creates the painting that is the material world. And then all of these physical properties, even those misattributed to some concept of gravitation, are all emergent properties from this canvas.
That this medium, the ether, must be of the nature of a solid body, because transverse waves are not possible in a fluid, but only in a solid.
It makes sense. Ether is required for there to even be space. Exactly.
The error.
It's understandable why they thought this, because little history lesson, right? Like Maxwell was looking like in a vacuum and stuff, and he saw, oh, there's permeability, which is the ability to go through something, right? And then there's permittivity, the ability to store something. And so it has electric permittivity, magnetic permeability, and you have the permittivity and the permeability inside of a vacuum chamber, and that gives you the speed of light. That's where it came from. It's Maxwell's equations, right? C, the speed of light, permeability and permittivity. Now, it's actually not correct. It's not invariant. And that shows that there is something that is actually, it's fluctuating, it's in flux, it's changing, right? And there seems to be a directional preference, just like my boy Space Odds breaks down with specificity. And so if there's a preferred direction, that's just throws relativity far out of the water. But it's understandable why people would think like, oh, light travels, because that's what it's what it looks like to you, because you're just seeing the background light up. So you're just watching this vibration, this disturbance, this perturbation, this excitation. You're just seeing it illuminate because it gets excited, and then it induces back in, instantly inducing back in. If you don't keep the source exciting it, then it goes away because it's already there and it's just excited and illuminating. But you can understand why people would think like, oh, that light permeated through. But now we know there has to be something else. There has to be a medium for it to permeate through. So there must be some type of ether permeating through all reality. But no, like it's the primary canvas, and you have a primary mover that sets motion inside that canvas, the painter. You know what's crazy? Sometimes I think like, bro, right now you're so ridiculed to say stuff like this, and the Dunning-Kruger also thinks so smart. I'm just confident in how I state things, but this is what conversation used to be like, bro. Like, this used to be so encouraged by intellectual minds. Like, what happened to this world? Anyway.
Here is to refer to a solid. What is required is an electrically neutral but polarizable medium of almost zero mass. Wolfgang Pauli in 1930 predicted a part.
When he says electrically neutral, really it would be pure potential. Pure potential. State of inertia. True rest. And there's a motion set within that medium of a pure inertia and pure potential, which requires a primary mover. Like, logically speaking, it's impossible without one.
Particle, the neutrino, which answered those requirements. And only this year a Nobel Prize was awarded for the confirmation that it has a vanishingly small variable mass. In other words, it is electrically neutral and electrically polarizable, which results in variable mass. Polarized neutrinos can rotate to transmit a transverse electromagnetic wave at the speed of light, and daisy chain the more static direct longitudinal electric force of gravity immediately. The difference is like that between waving one end of a rope and...
Dude, that is proof, or that evidence perfectly comports to what I'm saying is misidentified as quote-unquote gravitation. Because it's actually a reciprocation, it's a reaction, it's a result of the excitation within the background. It's an emergent property, it's an effect. That's it. And so Einstein did move Newton more in the right direction, ironically, when he said, well, gravity is actually an effect, which is why it's so funny whenever people now say that mass attracting mass as gravity and that it's a cause. No. In the current heliocentric paradigm, gravity is an effect, and it's not because they just decided to change it. It's because they had to based on the evidence. So they say that gravity is actually the effect of the bending and warping of space-time. It is taking the truth from the ether proponents, the fatherheads of electrical field theory. He took the truth, combined them all together, used Henri Poincaré's geometry to wrap it all together, used his wife to iron out the math, used like 10 other mathematicians to help him out, still got the math wrong, because the math still argued about even after he fixed it, after he initially published it. But the point is that he had a little bit of truth in there because he took the observational evidence and interpretations from the electrical field theory fatherheads, right? The actual intelligent experiment experimental physicists like Tesla, right, who actually did experiments nonstop, right? And so whenever it's saying that gravity is an effect, well, yeah, gravity is just, it's non-point specific, incoherent dielectric acceleration. I know people don't want word salad, like, okay, whatever, because we're not talking about that right now. The point is, it's an effect, it's a reaction. You have an action, and like, let me just describe this again, because I think this is very profound, and I'd love to hear people's feedback, and maybe I'm overlooking something. You have the primary source, and you have the canvas. You have the painter, and you have the canvas. It sets the motion, and its existence, its mere existence and presence creates this vibrational disturbance, this motion, right? And it creates this, you have to have a primary source, and seemingly in the center, which, what a coincidence, everything moves around a central point and in the sky, right? So then it sets the motion, it creates the motion within this background. This is a higher level stream, it is for this. So it sets the motion within this background, and then we see energetic physical phenomena, right? And we're like, oh, let's identify each one and call them all these different names and particles. No, and claim that, oh, this is the cause of this or whatever, and limit it all to material. What people are calling gravity is an emergent property of the background, of the oscillations within this fluid-like medium. It's emergent. It's an effect. It's a byproduct. It's the action and reaction. That waving creates a reaction. And just like throwing a pebble in the water, and that's why just like Newton said, if there is a force akin to gravity of an equal and opposite reaction, well, yeah, it's just the reciprocation of the medium. All energy requires and necessitates reciprocation. So, literally, the first natural law should be pressure mediates. That should be the first one. Pressure mediation is everything. Pressure mediation results in reciprocation, right? Maybe I should just make a rap with the Asian rhyme, right? And then you have light is a excitation due to a perturbation causing illumination. All right, let's move on. I'm all over the place.
Results in variable mass. Polarized neutrinos can rotate to transmit a transverse electromagnetic wave at the speed of light and daisy chain the more static direct longitudinal electric force of gravity immediately. The difference is like that between waving one end of a rope and pulling on it. The wave motion takes time to reach the other end, while the tug is more nearly instantaneous. Because neutrinos have mass, they will form...
Yeah, it takes time to be perceived in terms of light.
...form a kind of ether atmosphere about bodies like the Earth and the Sun. And like our atmosphere, the ether is dragged by...
This is a cartoon. This is not where you live.
...Earth and drifts like a wind for observers on Earth. This drift of the ether was detected by the Michelson and Morley experiment, and more convincingly by Dayton Miller, at different locations and elevations. Miller found a residual which allowed him to conclude that ponderable bodies like the Earth drag the ether with them. The speed of light is not a constant...
See, that's what's so insane. They try to say that it drags the ether with them. Now, that doesn't work, and I can easily debunk it, but I won't. But what it actually showed with Dayton Miller was that, yeah, it changes at elevations, it changes in different times of the year. You left that part out, because that's what debunks your claim there. They know they need the ether, but they want to keep the heliocentric model. So they're trying to say that the Earth moves around the sun and drags the ether with it. Right, but in reality, the Earth is stationary, everything moves, and that's why you got different effects, different elevations at different times of the year, because that effect's actually coming down from the sky. It's radiating out from a central primary source and then radiating down towards us, effectively creating stress or strain, pressing down on us. And that's what sets the objective up and down.
In all inertial frames of reference. Einstein, in a letter to Edwin E. Slosson in July 1925, wrote, "My opinion about Dayton Miller's experiments is the following. Should the positive result be confirmed, then the special theory of relativity, and with it the general theory of relativity in its current form, would be invalid." There
you go. And he goes on to even... let's see. Okay, so... my opinion about Dayton Miller's experiments is the following. Should the positive result be confirmed, then the theory of relativity, and with it the general theory of relativity in its current form would be invalid. And he actually goes on to say, because experiments reign supreme, and it'll basically be toppled, it would be toppled from the throne. This is Einstein himself. Well, Dayton Miller did it 5,200,000 times, dude. And he accounted for every variable people could come up with. They just said, no, waited till he died and then buried it. 5,200,000 times with different materials, at different elevations, at different times of the year. And the fringe shift correlated specifically to the equinoxes. And Elias pointed this out much later. And this is the part that he's going to leave out because it debunks the idea the Earth is moving for sure, even with his desperate attempt to try to keep it. This is very important stuff, because what that means is there's this immense amount of energy above us, and we can detect it, and it's moving around us, and it's creating this wind, this drift, this vortex central to the central axis, or the location of the primary source.
The successful burying of Miller's work would make a good documentary. Einstein's second postulate is invalid. It is noteworthy that reinstating the ether explains the bending of light from a distant star by the sun as simply a refraction effect. Gravity has no direct influence on light.
For continuous updates.
Okay, cool. Someone said, so electrostatics is responsible for the weight of every bit of matter in the realm. Yeah, like specifically, it would be the primary causal agent, but actually it wouldn't even really be the primary, right? That's like within a physical limitation, a material limitation. So like, all right, I'm going to explain what I think. So what do we call weight? People call it mass times gravity. What is gravity? It's just an agreed upon average, little g, 9.8 meters per second squared. It's that things accelerate down, right? In reality, things don't go 9.81 meters per second squared. They change. They go different rates at different heights, different rates at different latitudes, and not consistent with the prediction of the globe either, by the way. But it makes sense because you're in a vortex, and that vortex is different at different latitudes, and it's actually all relative to. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a picture. Maybe this will help explain this. We're ladling some gravy today. I know people are going to get triggered, but okay, now. Well, we'll show this one first. So here, just like we showed on Globebusters, you see that you would have the vortex. This is a Farrell cell image of a magnetic field, right? You would live in the middle of that, and actually, let me come down here and change, transform. Okay, if you see here in the top left, you're going to see that this is what's called a plane of inertia, because it's unchanging, so, and it's a plane, so it's an unchanging plane of inertia. And the name for it in academia is a block domain wall, named after the guy who discovered it, Bloch. So you have this plane of inertia, okay, right through the middle. We would live on that, specifically on the top of it, and then that would imply as above, so below. Okay, so anyway, we perceive the top half of this field. We live within that torus field, so we may live within a sphere, right? Because it goes all around you, and really, it's a torus field. So anyway, you look up and you see the motion going around this central point right here. I think I can turn it on where you can see my mouse, but I know you guys can't right now. So you see the top right. You see obviously there's a dark hole in the center, right? Well, and then everything's vortexing around it, just like in this bottom right picture. Okay, so keep that in mind. Dude, I think I have a working model. That's why someone said, do you want to debate R and Raw and like maybe in person and about Flat Earth? He wants you to bring a model. I'm like, yes, I will bring a model. I will bring a fully functional model, dude. Okay. I know we don't need one, and people are like, oh, why are you talking about models? Oh, we don't have to have a model. Models aren't reality. I agree. I'm just saying I can present a model. I can present a model that's significantly more viable than anything that they have. Significantly more viable. It's not even close. It's like kind of sad how much better it is. Okay, check this out, bro. So you have the magnetic field in the magnet, and you have the dielectric field in the magnet, right? So you have okay, so you have, and it's, as ironically, it's like discharge and charge, and that's actually what people call negative charge and positive charge. But either way, so right here, if you look to the right, what you're going to have, because this is a conjugate geometry, meaning that it's two sides to the same coin, the heads and tails. You can't have one without the other, and they're superimposed. Conjugate geometric expression. You have the centrifugal divergence here on the left, and then you have centripetal convergence on the right. So when I say magnetism is actually a conjugate geometric expression of centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, that is not word salad. It's a very specific argument. Okay, so if you look here and you have the dielectric, the convergent properties, right? In a centripetal, that's coming in. Now, if you look really close, I can't get it any bigger, but if you look really close, you see these arrows are all going at an angle out from the center. So yes, you would have a different pressure at different quote unquote latitudes, which is us just taking elevation angle measurements to Polaris in the center. And that's how we got the latitudes in the first place. Then they hijacked those plain Earth measurements and then crammed them on a ball, then turned it into a cylinder, then flattened it out and gave you the nonsense maps that they give you now. So that's why it would change with latitude. I did all that just to show you that. It would change with latitude. You have to see how the globe is like an impressive lie, almost on like a metaphysical level, because of how much it hijacks from reality. But, you know, truth or lies can't stand the test of time. But anyway, so I'm doing all this to answer your weight question because I think it's important. I think you're genuinely asking. Okay, so anyway, we have this motion around us, right? And I would say there's a primary source, like I've said like 20 times, and that sets everything into motion, and that this is coming down onto us, right? And so that's going to set the up and down. It's coming down, so it's pressing stress or strain. Ironically, exactly what Tesla said, which was that static electricity is actually the ether under strain, and that magnetism and electricity is the ether set into motion. More specific, yeah, like any motion other than just like concentrated vibrational displacement based on the stress or strain coming from above. Now, so I've tweaked it a bit, make very specific about where it's coming from. But anyway, so in my assessment and speculation station, if you will, because I can't scientifically, empirically validate or manipulate the primary source or creator. But anyway, that doesn't matter. Set that aside. We'll just talk about what we can actually experimentally validate scientifically on the Earth, right? Is that everything is intrinsically electrostatic. There's not one piece of matter in all of existence that is not electrostatic. Not one. Rubber, glass, sand, wood, you name it. It's all electrostatic. All of it. There's nothing that exists, not one single object in all of existence that anyone can bring up that is not electrostatic. Okay, so let's set that aside. That's a variable that has to be acknowledged because we just established that it's literally always there. We have to acknowledge it, okay? Now we talked about, well, what is density? Density is vibrational resonance, okay? So, well, but people will say compactness of matter, the amount of mass or matter in a certain amount of volume, how compactly and tightly held together that matter is in that volume. So then the primary cause of that, what would be the cause of the density? What would be whatever's holding the matter together? Well, we know that's electrostatics. They have a molecular atomic model to explain the density of different elements, and we explained, no, you don't actually need a stupid atomic model because the atom is nothing more than that fractal toroid geometry, but you can have different compactness of vibration, right? You can have bigger and more spread out waves and then more compact waves, and so it would be more compact, thus more dense, and that different elements are actually vibrational resonances. So that set aside, the point is that just set aside the atomic dispute, okay? You have density, compactness of matter, so it's how tightly held together the matter is in a certain volume, okay? And so that's whatever's holding it together is the cause of that. That means electrostatics is the cause of density. You can't have density without it. So what is weight? Well, once things go down, we attribute a average to them, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. You don't need any type of gravity to come up with this either. You can use a kinematic equation using height, initial velocity, and time, and you can get this value. But it's not exactly that, but it's an average. It's pretty close to that, and it fluctuates. Okay. So, and it fluctuates at the same location. If there's like a lightning storm or a thunderstorm and the electric field changes, what a coincidence. Okay. So anyway, so when things go down, we quantify that average rate of fall with 9.8 meters per second squared. Although, mind you, can you show me where a test has been done in a vacuum chamber that's like 5 miles high and we saw that it didn't continue to accelerate? Of course not. So that's a part that never gets addressed either. It's just a made up claim that it just reaches 9.8 and then it's maxed out or something. Well, can you show me where someone tested this without air resistance at immense distances to prove it doesn't continue to accelerate? No. But anyway, so we use quote unquote mass and weight. So the amount of matter with that, the fact that it's going to go down, right? And that's how we get the concept of weight, which is really downward pressure over a certain volume or certain area, right? Downward pressure on a scale. That's how we quantify weight. So that's why I said we don't deny gravity. That's gravitas, heavy, how heavy something is. Now, things go up or down based on their density, and they create what's called a buoyant force. I'm giving a very in-depth answer here, okay? So what's the buoyant force? Because that is pressure mediating, meaning like you have an object, it's more dense than the air, so this is interacting with its medium. Since it's more dense than the air, which what is density? It's compactness of matter. Since this is more compactly and tightly held together with electrostatics, then it's more dense than the air, which is not held together nearly as tight and compact with electrostatics as this pin. So as I drop it, it goes down. has a downward bias. Has a tendency down because it's more dense than its medium. So it has a downward bias, has a tendency down, okay? Now I can actually make this pin levitate with acoustic levitation, magnetic levitation, electrostatic levitation if you introduce enough. Okay, so that means that even though there's a downward bias, things can go up. Okay, and what we've found out is that primary, the strongest component seems to be this density relationship, which results in what people call buoyancy, or this buoyant force. So the question is, what is the mechanism that is causing this to happen? What's the mechanism that carries out the pressure mediation between this pin and the air? Because if they're having an interaction and pressure is mediating, this object's mediating pressure relative to the medium, then it's going down. Well, what's carrying that out? What's the mechanism? It's electrostatic induction. It's actually the energy is being transferred some way, and that's electrostatics, because this object has electrostatics on its surface, and inside of it, so does the air. All molecular and intermolecular attractive forces are electrostatic in nature, Purdue University, even within the molecular and atomic perspective, right? Which we don't have to believe in, but that's should be set aside to iron out this part. This is really in depth, and hopefully I'll simplify it at the end, really short and concise. But okay, so everything that exists is electrostatic, so we know this is happening. So what can we do? We can control the variable electrostatics and see what happens. Well, if we change the electrostatics of the medium, then how fast this object falls will change. So if I put this on a scale and it weighs 5 ounces, and then I introduce electrostatics and it levitates off the scale, how much does the pin weigh then? Well, you can say it still weighs 5 ounces, but electrostatics is countering it. But it's like, well, we're manipulating the variable that was already there, and we just discovered how it's actually the primary variable that's present for the entire process. So long story short, as concise as I can be, throwing out what the primary causal agent is, which would invoke like an etheric background framework, right? Set that aside. Yes, electrostatics is the cause of everything that we call weight on the Earth, because things go up or down based on their density and buoyancy relationship, right? So what sets the up and down? Well, there's a downward electric bias on the Earth, and things that have any charge or any electric flux, they seek the ground to find equilibrium. So you have all this fluctuation of different electric charge up above us, and it just wants to seek down. But it's super, super weak in the grand scheme of things, especially in something like air that is not very dense, right? So everything's electric, and so we have the up and down setup. Now, the primary thing that makes up and down happen is this buoyancy, which is based on the density relationship. Density is intrinsically electrostatic, so it's the electrostatic density relationship of this pin and this medium, its object, the object in the medium. So everything is simply pressure mediation based on the relationship with the surrounding medium. So what exchanges this mechanism? What's the mechanism that exchanges this pressure mediation? It has to be electrostatic, the commonality, the variable of commonality with all things. And so yes, the primary component of everything that we call weight and density and mass is electrostatics. So I know that was a lot, but I mean, I feel like I've been answering that question for years at this point. Great explanation. Thank you. If anyone has a further question about that, I want to make sure that everyone understands what I'm saying. I feel like I was so over the top with that people should definitely get it. It would be unscientific to deny what I just said, right? Shout out to Justin Johnson gifting memberships again. What a legend. You guys should consider keeping the memberships he gifts, because we're about to roll out the merch. I'm looking for the best place to give you guys merch, though. Still looking for the best way to do that. But we're going to have exclusive merch for, like, say, patrons get exclusive merch. YouTube members get exclusive merch, etc. Thank you, Justin Johnson. Legend, always gifting memberships, bro. Lightning is an electrostatic fart. Yeah, okay. It's electrostatic discharge. I'm assuming that's about to read. That's what I'm waiting on. Why is it not reading it? All right, I'll just read it, whatever.
Hard Hitter 50 donated $100 through Super Chat. Austin, been missing your streams. I have been watching a bunch of your older ones from a couple years ago and saw one where you mentioned the Conspiracy 6 conspiracy book. I had to buy it and check it out, pretty good so far. Interesting book.
And then he said, hope you're doing well, dude. Thank you so much for the very generous donation, bro. Hard Hitter 50, thank you for the $100 donation, brother. And yeah, Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne. It's got so much gravy in it. It's insane. Glad you got it and find it interesting. It's very interesting. It has a bunch of like extra biblical accounts geographically of like the Watchers and the Nephilim and hybrids and stuff. It's pretty wild. It's definitely interesting. Be open-minded and take in all the historical documentation. Yeah, I'm hoping to link up with him soon. I know he's writing his second book, so he told me he would be free closer towards the end of the year, which is awesome. He's writing a second book he's been working on for a long time. Let's be calm with the timeouts, please. I only renewed the gifted stuff from Justin from last month, Rogan up. Nice. Episode is fire, I think. Luck on your move, Wit. Hope everything goes smoothly for you and your family. Thank you so much, man. Prayers appreciated. For the decision of where we're going, the decision on which house to pick, and then the proper financial decisions. Yeah, you get it. But prayers are definitely appreciated. Hopefully super chats and memberships help the algorithms. Normies do YouTube and TikTok, etc. Yeah, thank you for the $10 super chat, nominal. And I do keep on planning on getting on TikTok. I know once I start, I won't stop. So I just kind of been putting it off, let's be honest. Trying to wait on it to read. I don't want to read it and then it reads it. So anyway, you guys get the whole gist of the stream is that this is the end of the Einstein, even the mainstream academic source in it. We kind of just veered off and we started talking about all kinds of stuff. I didn't plan a lot of those videos. I didn't watch all of them. And I think it was cool, man. I think we covered a lot of subjects. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Hard Hitter 50 donated $100 through Super Chat. What do you think of that weird megasphere thing they built in Vegas, lol? Spent $2 billion plus to build it, very weird. Raised eyebrow, thoughtful face, also meant Genesis 6 conspiracy in last Super Chat. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome to see a stream with you and Gary. What do I think of the weird megasphere thing they built in Vegas? We'll check it out if people haven't seen it. I think it's super weird though. I don't know. $2 billion. It's kind of cool though. It's really crazy technology, just covered in LEDs. It's like, dude, the stuff that they can do now is
GCS
wild.
donated $20 through Super Chat.
Thank you, JCS, for the $20 Super Chat. Greatly appreciated, brother. Much love. Hard Hitter 50 also meant Genesis 6 Conspiracy in last Super Chat. That would be awesome to see a stream with you and Gary. Yeah, dude, I definitely want to make it happen, and I want to get him on our summit to just ladle gravy for an hour. It's gonna be dope. Well, yeah, thank you for the very generous super chat again, bro. $100, man. Greatly appreciated. 2 very generous donations. So thank you so much. Since you brought it up, in case no one knows, let's see what it is. It's pretty funny. This is in Las Vegas, which is where Flattoberfest will be, flattoberfest.com. I will be presenting, and we may have an in-person debate there as well.
This is the Sphere, Vegas's newest, most ambitious, and most eye-catching attraction to date. And although its exterior is impressive on its own, what lies inside is actually far more interesting than you might think. Let's take a closer look. The city of Las Vegas is famous for its unique and over-the-top architecture. Its resorts and casinos are some of the most iconic structures. Sheer size and almost perfectly spherical shape, construction was no easy feat. The engineering behind this, why build a sphere? Well, the answer is actually fairly all at once. But aside from the concerts, nature of the structure and the engineering work behind it.
It's pretty crazy, bro. It's pretty crazy. Look at that. It just, Tons of LEDs.
Human eye are just some of the things that have already been displayed. Companies are even eyeing the possibility of using the display as one giant billboard for advertisements, which is a huge opportunity for both advertisers and the creators of the sphere. When the project was first...
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what to think about it, man. I think it's wild. But yeah, that reminds me. Well, we will be in Vegas, which is called Sin City. It's wild that it's called that. And it does look like a lot of destruction and judgment happened in that area, geographically. But October 28th, is that right? Or is it October? I don't know. I think it might be October 28th. Don't quote me. But flattoberfest.com or flatearthfestivals.com. You can get your tickets. Yeah, and I'll be presenting. A lot of other legends will be presenting. It should be cool. It's a good time to hang out with truthers. And I think since it's closer to the West Coast, a lot of new people are going to be there. A lot of bigger names are going to show up. So it should be cool. You guys should definitely consider showing up. I thought I saw another question. Weird, yeah. Austin, are you going to write a paper? I mean... Yeah, I do want to write a couple papers. I know they won't go anywhere, though. Try to get them to somebody with credentials and maybe try to publish them. I want to write a paper about gravity. And the ether. And geocentric stationary topographical plane model that explains all observable phenomena. Well, how dare you? Yeah, but it's just like, it just feeds the trolls too, right? Because they're obviously not going to put my paper out with peer review when it questions like the fundamental assumptions of consensus of mainstream academia beliefs. Like, it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. R.I.P. Einstein had a good run. Yeah, I mean, what's so funny, bro, is it's like even their paradigm is saying like Einstein doesn't work. It doesn't work. And let me just give you again, this is just, and we may cover this more in depth because I covered dark matter, so I didn't want to just like do too much dark matter. So I've covered dark matter specifically, but they made a prediction with relativity, and they had to do this to explain away the evidence to show the Earth is not orbiting the sun; it's actually in the center. And this is after and then later they looked out and said, "Oh, it's really in the center. All observations show us that we're in the center. Oh my gosh, what a coincidence!" Michelson-Morley shows us that the Earth is not orbiting, and then Dayton Miller does it 5 million times, consistently showing the Earth is not orbiting, and that the effect of the fringe shift actually is measured, not instrumental error, provably so, because it consistently happens with all variables accounted for, whether that be temperature, radiant temperatures, different types of material, and it changes at different elevations, and it changes throughout the year, showing that it's coming from the sky. That's why it changes at different elevations. You're getting slightly closer to the sky. It changes throughout the year because, of course, the cycle of the sky changes. And relativity can't explain it changing throughout the time of the year because there should be nothing detected according to the relativistic lack of preference of reference frame. So anyway, you have all this, and then you move forward, you can get in even worse territory where in 1933, Fritz Zwicky discovered that the galaxy cluster only had 1% of the mass predicted and needed, according to relativity, to keep the galaxies from escaping the cluster. There wasn't enough mass, thus not enough gravity. There wouldn't be enough gravity there to keep the galaxies together in a cluster instead of escaping because there wasn't near enough mass. There was only 1% of the mass predicted, so they were missing 99% mass. And then you get 1955 galaxy rotational speed problems and all this stuff, and many, many other problems. So they proposed something called dark matter, and Fritz Zwicky is the one that is attributed to discovering dark matter. And basically, it's like my prediction said there was 100 pennies, we only found 1 penny, so never mind, my theory can't be wrong because I don't like the implications of that philosophically. So we'll say there was actually 99 invisible pennies there that behave and act just like the 1 penny, but we can't see it. It doesn't interact with light, can't be detected. We can't define it, don't know exactly what it is, but we'll just throw it in there mathematically and keep rocking with it. That was almost a century ago, and they still haven't fixed the problem. Anyway, when you assume this dark matter, which again is unidentified, undefined nonsense, it's just pseudoscience, and then you apply it to fixed relativity, now you have certain predictions with this propped up mathematical band-aid version of relativity, which is, that's what it was in the first place, actually. It doesn't work either. Whenever you have these like dark matter clusters and all this stuff, it actually doesn't work. It doesn't work. The dark matter doesn't work. The dark matter fix still doesn't work to explain the sky. So relativity is just so far beyond decapitated, whether that be the preferred direction and I mean, we go on and on. I could debunk relativity for like 5 hours. It's just so ridiculous. So much wrongs with it. But That being said, it's getting to such an extent now, they can't even like make stuff up to get out of it. And so that's why I said the end of Einstein. It's the end of Einstein. The mainstream academia is starting to move towards it. And by the way, pop sci articles for the layman to propagandize people is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the people that are claimed to be scientists. When you say, oh, you're a science denier, you think you're smarter than all the scientists. Oh, Dunning-Kruger. Oh, you don't believe in science. Oh, you deny all the scientists do this for a living. Oh, you think you're smarter than all the authority of the scientists, blah, blah, blah. These are the people that are actually telling you that Einstein's provably wrong. It doesn't work. It has to be replaced. It's completely incapable of making the predictions that it's supposed to. It's provably not the case. It's observationally falsified. And so it's just funny because like the only way they can actually move away from it is to invoke like an etheric substantive model, and that means the Earth's in the center. So like I don't know how they're ever going to do it. And so they're just sitting back like, oh, modified Newtonian dynamics doesn't work. Like whatever they can come up with, relativistic modified Newtonian dynamics doesn't work, and they can make up any story they want to in the world, right? But if I offer something that does explain all of it and it's supported by all the evidence and it doesn't have paradoxes and it isn't refuted by the empirical evidence, it can't be even entertained. How is that not dogmatic nonsense? What's it? The whole point of science is to improve on it? Yeah, but the whole point of science is to not have some type of philosophical bias that doesn't allow certain ideas that are more valid in. That's a religion. So the whole point of science is that's my point. The whole point of science is to improve on it. It is to be honest and without bias. It is not to be, flooded down with dogma or philosophical bias. Whenever you see that your theory doesn't work and all the evidence shows something else that cannot be disproven and does work, then you go with the theory that works. You don't ignore the theory because it's horrific and intolerable and shows the Earth is special, thus must be avoided at all costs, to quote Edwin Hubble. You accept the evidence for what it is and you continue to grow. You don't shun people that don't accept what you believe or don't just propagate your disproven pseudoscience. Just like that guy said, the fact you have all these United States quote-unquote scientists running around trying to compete for funding, thus they have to go to the government and say, hey, can we get more money? I promise we're going to find evidence that supports the current consensus and the currently accepted theory. So then it's just like this echo chamber of like incompetent ineptitude that just runs in circles perpetually and never figures anything out. And then this is what I'm saying, I've given such specific refutations of that pseudoscientific model, even in this stream, but you'll never get direct rebuttals. That's how science works. Austin, you don't know how science works. Yeah, just because you found something at the cutting edge of science, that doesn't mean it's all wrong. You think you're smarter than all the scientists. Yeah, that's how science works. We're still learning things. Yeah, you're actually not addressing the points because you're suffering from cognitive dissonance, bro. You're afraid of the truth, and honestly, you may not be honest enough with yourself to see the truth, right? You may not be allowed to see the truth, so it's okay. Science can only work in our universe. We cannot use it outside of it where God might be. It doesn't work in your universe, buddy. It doesn't even work on the Earth. It doesn't work on the Earth or your supposed solar system model or any of the universe. It doesn't work. It has been falsified. Science accepts the falsification. Science is not unfalsifiable shifting of the goalposts. Just like Karl Popper said, the fundamental staple of science requires falsifiability. How do you falsify the inflaton and early dark energy that existed at a singularity at the beginning of time with a big bang, but everything changed? None of the observational evidence shows that anymore, and we can't define it, but I promise it was there billions of years ago. I promise it was there 13.5 billion years ago. How is that falsifiable? How is that not a religion? You made up a creation account of all existence with made up terms you can't define and have no evidence for, and it can't be tested or falsified. And when the evidence goes against it, you just make up a new term. Oh, dark matter, dark energy, dark flow, dark dust. Like, these are all real terms I made up. Like, the inflaton, early dark energy. We don't know what dark energy is, but here's the early version of it. It must have been like this. How is this not pseudoscience? How is this not a religion? There's an all-creative force called gravitation.
Donated $100 through Super Chat. Crazy the type of fear they try to put into people. Saw a post on Instagram other day about an asteroid barely missed Earth. Rolling eyes face, right.
Bro, super generous, bro. Hard hitter is out here crushing, bro. Thank you so much, man. That is very generous. Another $100 super chat, bro. Crazy the type of fear they put into people. They saw Instagram posts talking about asteroid, barely missed Earth. Dude, if you look up asteroids almost hit Earth, heading towards Earth, or barely missed Earth, you're going to see like hundreds of articles saying that for like the last 15, 20 years. So yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's crazy because Werner von Braun's like secretary said that he told her on the deathbed, which the story goes, he told her that he knew he only had a couple weeks to live. He was like, but I'm going to stay alive long enough to tell you what's going to happen. And he opened up to her and told her all their plans to trick people with the stories, and that they were going to work their way up to asteroids and then aliens, and that all of it was fake. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe they pull like an actual asteroid hoax, or they just use the asteroids this whole time and then pull out an alien, or maybe the aliens come save us from an asteroid, or who knows. But thank you for the very generous super chat, Hard Hitter 50, man. Thank you so much. There's nothing left to explore, Truman. Yeah. Making any positive claims can be religious, honestly. How so? Like, this is a pin. I can touch the pin. I just made 2 positive claims that weren't religious. Ridiculous. Science is supposed to natural science is supposed to just be empirical. And then you have interpretive frameworks, philosophical frameworks, right? And that's where you would get into like ether, right? Ether is not natural science in the sense it's not like directly and tangibly manipulable. Right, but it's the only thing that offers a coherent framework. All interpretation or all evidence seems to show us that that's the only way to actually address the phenomena. You can ignore it, whatever. I mean, science and philosophy are joined at the hip in the sense that, well, what are you going to do with the evidence if you don't attempt to interpret it and make sense of it, right? But yeah, I mean, science and religion are specifically not the same thing. So. Get a hold of Tomb of Illumination, please. I've heard a lot of people tell me that. Yeah, I've talked to his old name was Flat Earth Philosophy. But yeah, we'll have to link up for sure. I've had a few people tell me I need to check them out. Calling something a religion isn't a bad thing. When it's called specifically not a religion, and that it's the savior from religion, and that it removes all religious bias and dogma, and that it's scientific. Like it's like scientifically valid, non-philosophically biased, like legitimate evidence, and all this stuff. Whenever it's called science and it's claimed to be like the exact opposite of religion, and it's religious and it's deceptive and it censors people that don't believe it, and it's crammed down children's throat and leads them into a belief system that they're insignificant and unimportant, and they're lied to as if it is scientifically verified fact, when actually it's religious, dogmatic pseudoscience. Yes, that is a problem. I've responded to you enough, bro. Mind Unveiled would be a good guess. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. All right, cool. So we're at 3 hours. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'm feeling my eyelids getting heavy, so it's time to cut these lights off. But thank you guys for kicking it. I tried to cover a bunch of different stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know we were all over the place, but basically, like Space Out has said, pack it up, boys. It was a good run. Einstein, it's over. It was a pathetic run from the beginning, actually. You never even began to run. It's as if you tried to go to the Boston Marathon in a wheelchair or something. It's like not even intellectually viable on its face. It's so stupid. Do you like Nick Fuentes? I don't have a problem with him. Firestream, thank you. I think Nick Fuentes is a very sharp individual. And I like that he doesn't like let censorship and all the tactics and the threats and stuff like that stop him from speaking his mind. I have mad respect for anyone that's like that. So yeah. I like most people that are honest and don't capitulate But I can't wait for you to come back full time. Hope your family and you are doing well. Awesome stream. Thank you. Yeah, we're doing good. We just got to get all this the house thing figured out. Finally get settled in, and we'll be good. It's gonna really. You guys will see. Everything's gonna change. It's gonna be wild. And you guys are gonna be the ones that were here. You guys are gonna be the ones that were here as the OGs before it all popped off. All right, cool. I'm gonna get out of here. I love you guys. Thank you guys for kicking it. If you want to support channel, links in the description. You can also go to our Telegram and stay up to date. Talk. There's a bunch of cool conversations and gravy that goes on in a Telegram. That link's in the description as well. You can also personally message me on there at @wissit. And I just read that super chat, right? Yeah. Didn't that guy get banned from YouTube? Yeah, he got banned from like everything. He talks about Zionism. Guess you're not allowed to do that, you know what I'm saying? Thanks for the stream. Yeah, no problem. All right, cool. So I know it's all over the place, but I know it's been a while since we've been here, so I tried to really give you guys my take on a bunch of stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know some of it's a little bit wordy or nerdy or like fast or like a lot of information or whatever, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Much love. See y'all at the True Earth debate tomorrow night. Shout out to Troubling Tribune. Go support him. Go support Space Odds as well. But yeah, go check out Troubling Tribune tomorrow night. True Earth debate. Austin, you smashed tonight. Thank you so much. I think Kai and I should be debating this weekend if it all works out. So stay in tune with that. And I'm trying to set up a debate with me and Iru on MDD. I think that'd be cool. So, all right, cool. So you can speak truth unequivocally. Because the weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So, like, they'll never stop, and capitulating to them will never bring you happiness. It does nothing for you. Try to be patient and calm and speak the truth and do it with good intentions and be empathetic and patient with people, you know. But just, you got to speak the truth. Like, holding it in is not good for you, man. You just got to speak the truth, speak it boldly, have a personal relationship with Yah, with the Creator, and, you know, link up with the real ones, and then try and make a positive impact on the world. Try to help do your part to wake people up from this slumber of like pseudoscientific materialism and depravity and degeneracy and enslavement, mental enslavement, you know, like the people that are going to attack you and use tactics and avoid what you're saying and not interact with good faith and just constantly try to divert, change the subject, gaslight, all that. Like, that's just, I mean, we're going to do that, and there's nothing you can do about it, and just speak truth unequivocally regardless. And that's kind of the whole vibe of this. That's like my message since the beginning. I believe in it very strongly. I think you should never give in on your convictions or what you think's right or speaking the truth, no matter how much people try to attack you or beat you down. You'll be the last one standing as long as you do what's right. And you know how in court there's a person that does the transcriber stenographer and they transcribe everything? Like, the creator has a transcript of everything, right? Even your intentions, your thoughts, like all that. So just know that, you know, it's being transcribed, and people want to go buy like expensive necklaces and stuff, but I'm just trying to get gems from the best jeweler, that's Yahuwah. So hallelujah. Yeah, so that's kind of what I hope everyone can kind of embrace. I think it's a very freeing mentality to understand that it doesn't matter what people think. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance, and you know, whenever they revile you for his name's sake, for the truth's sake, rejoice at it to all the prophets before you. What's true is rarely popular. What's popular is rarely true. I'll catch up with you guys soon, certainly at least Wednesday. And till then, peace out.
Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Mickelson Morley, it showed that the earth they don't move, huh? What they do, shorten the length of the ruler. Hey, that's just how they.
Okay, sorry. I can't do this. I can't leave Rockfin hanging. I did have to cut those lights off, but I can't leave Rockfin hanging. I forgot about you guys. I'm sorry, but I'm going to read your guys' tips. Flat Earth Eric, great stream. I got to check out for now. Thank you so much. Flat Earth Eric, many thanks for your work. Thank you for the $10 tip. Question the answers. Thank you for the $5 tip on Rockfin. RG the Artist, very generous. $100 tip on Rockfin. Thank you so much. When you mention dark matter or dark energy, you always see modern day scientists go into story mode real quick and start tap dancing around the subject. Yeah, I know, it's hilarious. Sorry that I didn't read them earlier. Shout out to the legends that were staying for the song. You guys get to hear this part, but thank you for the very generous donation, RG the Artist. Flat Earth Eric, again, $10. This is a tremendous stream. Thank you so much, brother. Glad you enjoyed it. Flat Earth Eric, great stream. I gotta check out for now. Thank you for the $10 and $5 tips. Very generous, brother. And the other $10 tip. David Torrey, $20 tip. You on Lex Friedman's podcast would break the internet. That's the doorway to a debate on JRE, and that would shatter the matrix. I'm honored to be on board before the tipping point. Yeah, bless. Thank you, brother, so much. Thank you for the $20 tip, and I agree. I feel for sure like some stuff like that's about to happen. It's going to be pretty crazy. I'm just kind of savoring the calm before the storm. Sick with it. Thank you for the $10 tip. Hi, Austin. Could you please check your email? I'm wondering about my etheric state order. It was ordered over a month ago. Appreciate everything you were doing, by the way. Keep killing it, bro. Okay, I'm not sure why you wouldn't have gotten it, but I'm assuming you're talking about what's a proton melt, and so I'll definitely check it out. I know we had a whole bunch of stuff going on with that, but I thought I had got it all situated out. But anyone that is like late like that, I'm trying to hook you guys up with a free one or whatever, because that's not cool. But yeah, I'll definitely hook you up, bro. I wish I had more details, but it's all good. I'll try to find you. Hopefully it's a proton mail, and I'll try to find it. Annie D, thank you for the $10 tip on Rockfin. Leland Wilt, $20 tip. What's it bringing the fire? Much love, y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. Brendan Hadley, thank you for the $10 on Rockfin. And Mike Westian, thank you for the $5 tip twice on Rockfin. Thank you guys. Much love. Shout out to the legends on YouTube as well. Thank you guys for kicking it. Sorry I faked you guys out, but anyway, I'll catch up with you guys soon. Gonna be epic. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Also, Sam Trimpley, yeah, that should be in the works actually. So you guys just trust me. Once we get the new house, we get all situated, you guys will be the first ones to know. But we got a lot of cool stuff in store. All right, cool. I'm actually leaving this time. I love you guys. I'll catch up with you guys soon. Peace.
Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Relatively speaking, first day after the weekend. Mickelson Morley, it showed that the earth, they don't move, huh? What they do, shorten the length of the ruler. Hey, that's just how they fooled ya. Tune in Wednesdays, bet that we gon' school ya. Mickelson Morley, it showed no displacement. Nicholson, Gale, Pearson, it measured rotation. Let's break it down in layman. That means the Earth is stationed. No planets and spaceships, they're all animations. Relatively speaking. First day after the weekend. Relatively speaking. First day after the weekend.